The spit hit her face at exactly 6:47 a.m., warm, deliberate, cruel. Preston Harrington III, 17 years old, heir to a political dynasty wearing a Rolex worth more than she made in a year, laughed as his saliva dripped down Denise Williams' left cheek. She was 45, black, a single mother, 16 years at this diner, and nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 30 people watched a woman get spit on like she was trash, and nobody did a damn thing. But Preston made one mistake. He didn't see Table 9, 10 men in leather vests, 10 Harley-Davidsons in the parking lot, 10 members of the Iron Brotherhood MC who had been watching everything. And they weren't going to look away. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Denise's story travels. Now let me take you back to where this all began. Denise Williams's phone buzzed at 4:15 in the morning. She was already awake. Had been for 20 minutes, lying in the dark doing the math she did every night. Rent was $847, due in 6 days. Electric was $156. Past due. Malik's medication was $340. Almost gone. She had $67 in her checking account. The phone buzzed again. "Mama?" Her son's voice came from the doorway. 11 years old, thin, holding his chest like something was breaking inside it. Denise was out of bed before he finished speaking. "Baby, what's wrong?" "Can't breathe right." She pressed her hand to his forehead. Warm. Too warm. His inhaler sat on the nightstand, nearly empty. She'd been rationing it for a week, giving him half puffs instead of full ones, praying the medicine would stretch until payday. "Sit down, baby. Slow breaths." "It hurts, Mama." I know it does." She grabbed the inhaler, shook it. Almost nothing left. She gave him what remained, watching his small chest rise and fall, waiting for the medicine to do what medicine was supposed to do. "Is it working?" she asked. Malik nodded slowly. "A little. A little." That word cut her deeper than any knife could. Her son needed real medicine, the expensive kind, the $340 kind that the doctor had recommended, and the insurance had denied. Instead, he got half puffs and prayers from a mother who couldn't afford to save him. "I have to go to work, baby." "I know, Mama. Miss Loretta's coming to check on you." "I'm 11. I don't need a babysitter." "I know that too, but humor me." She kissed his forehead, tried not to let him see the fear in her eyes, tried not to think about what happens when mothers can't afford to keep their children alive. "I love you, Malik." "Love you too, Mama." She grabbed her uniform from the closet, the same one she'd worn for 16 years. Blue dress, white apron, comfortable shoes that weren't comfortable anymore because the soles had worn through 3 months ago, and she'd stuffed them with newspaper to cover the holes. The newspaper was starting to fall apart. Everything was starting to fall apart. But Denise Williams got dressed anyway, because that's what she did. That's what she'd always done. She showed up. She survived. She kept going when going felt impossible. Her car sat dead in the driveway, had been dead for 3 weeks. The mechanic wanted $900 to fix the transmission. The bus didn't run this early, so she walked. 45 minutes, 3 miles. Mississippi summer humidity already thick at 4:30 in the morning, turning the air into something you had to push through rather than breathe. By the time she reached Rosie's Diner, her feet were aching and the newspaper in her shoes had turned to mush. Sweat soaked through her uniform. She had 15 minutes before her shift started. She pushed through the back door at 5:50 a.m. Gary Morrison was counting money at the register, owner of Rosie's Diner for the past 20 years, white, mid-50s, the kind of man who said, "I'm not racist, but," at least once a week, and never understood why people stopped listening after the but. "Morning, Gary," he grunted, didn't look up. 16 years she'd worked here. 16 years of perfect attendance, perfect service, perfect smiles, even when smiling felt like dying. Gary had never once asked about her son, never once learned Malik's name, never once treated her like she was anything more than a pair of hands that poured coffee and carried plates. "Coffee's running low," he said. "I'll make a fresh pot." And table 9 needs wiping. Those bikers leave ring stains. Denise bit back what she wanted to say. Table 9. The Iron Brotherhood MC sat there every Tuesday. They tipped better than anyone else in the diner, treated her like a human being, asked about her son by name. Gary treated them like criminals who might steal the silverware. "I'll get it clean," she said. "And don't forget to smile. Customers like it when you smile." Customers like it when you smile. 16 years of hearing that. 16 years of being told that her job was to perform happiness for people who never once wondered if she had anything to be happy about. She tied her apron, started the coffee, wiped down table 9 until it gleamed, checked her section, set out silverware, filled sugar dispensers, did everything she did every morning, every day, every year for 16 years. The diner was quiet, just the hum of the freezer and the tick of the old clock above the register. Peaceful, the kind of peace that comes right before everything explodes. At 6:15 she heard them, motorcycles, 10 of them, rolling into the parking lot like thunder given human form. Through the window she watched Marcus Tank Johnson climb off his Harley, 58 years old, former Marine. Graybeard now, but still solid as concrete, arms covered in tattoos that told stories she'd never ask about, eyes that had seen things nobody should see and somehow stayed kind anyway. Behind him came the others, Bone, Preacher, Razor, Mama Bear, the only woman in the group, and somehow the most dangerous, Ghost, Diesel, Chains, Doc, Little Mike, who was 6'4" and 280 pounds of pure muscle. They walked into the diner like they owned the air they breathed. "Morning, Miss Denise," Tank said. "Morning, table 9. Where else would we go?" They settled into the big booth. Same booth every Tuesday for 7 years. Same order every time. Same easy conversation that made Denise feel for just a few minutes like she was more than a servant in a blue dress. She brought coffee without asking. "How's Malik?" Tank asked when she poured his second cup. Her hands paused, just for a moment, just long enough for Tank to notice. "He's fine." "Miss Denise." Tank's voice was gentle. "Don't lie to people who care." She set down the coffee pot, looked at this man who scared most people just by existing, but who remembered her son's name every single week. "His asthma's bad. The medicine costs more than I make, but we'll manage. We always manage." Tank nodded slowly. The other bikers exchanged glances. Something passed between them. Something Denise didn't see. "Pancakes today," Tank said. "Stack of 5. Coming up." She was halfway to the kitchen when Mama Bear called out, "Hey, Miss Denise, you need anything? Money a ride somewhere? Whatever you need, you just say the word." Denise's throat tightened. "I'm okay, but thank you." She wasn't okay. But pride has a way of editing the truth. Pride and fear and the desperate need to believe that somehow, some way things would work out. She put in their order, started the pancakes, poured more coffee for the early crowd, farmers and truckers and nurses coming off night shift. Good people mostly. People who said please and thank you and left decent tips. At 6:35, everything changed. The Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. Denise saw it through the window. Sleek, black, expensive. The kind of car that cost more than most houses in this part of Mississippi. License plate read, Hey R1NG. Everyone in Jackson knew that car. Everyone in the whole damn county knew that car. Senator Richard Harrington's family chariot. "Oh, Lord," Bone muttered from table 9. "Here comes trouble." Tank set down his coffee cup. His eyes tracked the car as it parked in the premium spot near the front door. The spot that wasn't really reserved for anyone, but somehow was always empty when the Harringtons came around. Everybody stay cool. But staying cool was about to become impossible. The car door opened. A teenage boy stepped out. 17 years old. White. Polo shirt with the collar popped. Hairstyle to look like he'd just rolled out of bed, even though it probably took an hour and $100 worth of product. Rolex on his wrist. Designer sneakers on his feet. Preston Harrington III. 2 other boys followed him. Chad and Bryson. Same age. Same clothes, same empty expressions that said they'd never wanted for anything and never understood people who did. Chad wore sunglasses indoors. Bryson had his phone out already recording. They chose a booth in Denise's section. Of course they did. "Be right with you," she called, finishing an order for table 4. "We're in a hurry." Chad's voice was sharp, irritated. The voice of someone who had never been told to wait for anything in his life. Denise grabbed menus, put on the smile that cost her a piece of her soul every time she wore it, walked to their table with the same grace she'd practiced for 16 years. "Good morning, gentlemen. What can I get?" "Do you have anything that isn't complete garbage?" Preston interrupted without looking up from his phone. His voice was casual, bored, like insulting her was too tedious to even bother doing properly. At table 9, chairs creaked. Tank's hand went still on his coffee cup. "We have a full menu," Denise said carefully. "Everything's fresh today." "I seriously doubt that." Preston finally looked up. His eyes moved over her face, her uniform, her skin. Something shifted in his expression, something ugly. "What's your name?" He read her name tag before she could answer. "Denise." "Okay, Denise. Bring me an egg white omelet. No oil, fresh fruit that doesn't look like it came from a dumpster, and coffee that doesn't taste like sewer water. I'll get that started right." "Did I ask you to speak?" The diner got quieter, not silent, just aware, like the whole room was holding its breath. "No, sir." "Then don't. Bring the food. Try not to screw it up." He paused. Let his eyes move over her again. "Can you handle that? Or is that too complicated for you?" The way he said, "complicated." The pause before it. The sneer in his voice. Denise had heard that tone before, heard it her whole life. The tone that said, "You're less than me and we both know it." "Yes, sir. I'll get your order." She walked to the kitchen. Her legs wanted to buckle. Her hands wanted to shake. But she held it together because she had to. Because Malik needed his medicine. Because rent was due in 6 days. Because survival doesn't give you the luxury of falling apart. In the kitchen, she leaned against the prep counter, closed her eyes, allowed herself 3 seconds of weakness. 1, 2, 3. Then she put in the order and went back out, because that's what she did. That's what she'd always done. At table 9, the bikers ate slowly, watching, waiting. "She shouldn't have to take that," Mama Bear said quietly. "No," Tank agreed. "She shouldn't." "So why are we just sitting here?" "Because we wait, see if the boy finds his humanity on his own." Razor snorted. "He won't." "Then we help him find it." The breakfast rush started to build. More customers coming in, more tables to serve. Denise moved between them like a dancer, balancing plates, refilling coffee, answering questions, always smiling, always polite, even when her feet screamed and her back ached and her heart felt like it was dying inside her chest. At 6:42, she brought out Preston's order. Perfect plate, perfect presentation. She'd checked every piece of fruit herself, discarded anything that even looked slightly imperfect. The omelet was flawless. The coffee was fresh. Preston stared at it like she'd served him poison. "This is it." "Yes, sir. Exactly what you ordered. The fruit is bruised." It wasn't. Every piece was perfect. "Sir, the omelet looks like something a dog threw up." It didn't. It was beautiful. "Are you incompetent or just stupid?" Bryson's phone camera swung toward her face, recording her humiliation, capturing every second of her degradation for whatever social media platform rich kids use to mock poor people. "I can bring you something else. Manager, now. Or do I need to use smaller words?" His friends laughed. The sound was sharp, cruel. The laughter of boys who had never been told no, never been denied anything, never understood that other people's feelings were real. Gary appeared from the back office. His face was already arranged into the expression Denise knew too well, the expression that said he was about to throw her under the bus to make a wealthy customer happy. "What seems to be the problem here?" "Your waitress," Preston said lazily. Can't follow basic instructions. Look at this garbage. Gary looked at the plate. The perfect plate. The flawless omelet and the unblemished fruit and the fresh coffee. Then he looked at Denise. I apologize, Mr.
Harrington, Gary said. To Preston, not to Denise. The meal is comped. Denise, be more careful. Be more careful. 16 years of perfect service. 16 years of showing up early and staying late and never calling in sick even when she could barely stand. Be more careful. Yes, sir, she said, because what else could she say? Bring me a real breakfast, Preston said. Steak and eggs, medium rare, and this time... He paused, let his eyes crawl over her skin. Try to remember you're being paid to serve, not to breathe, not to think, just to serve. Yes, sir. She walked to the kitchen, put in the new order, walked back out, kept moving, kept smiling, kept dying inside where nobody could see. At table 9, Mama Bear's knuckles had gone white, gripping the edge of the table. Tank, I swear to God. Wait. I can't just... Wait. Not yet. But the waiting was almost over, and what came next would change everything. The steak came out at 6:46. Gary had cooked it himself. Perfect medium rare, pink center, beautiful sear. He was terrified that any complaint from a Harrington might reach the senator's ears, might affect his business license, might bring the full weight of political power crashing down on his little diner. Denise carried the plate to Preston's table. Finally, he said. He cut into the steak, chewed slowly, made a face of exaggerated disgust. Overcooked. It wasn't. She could see the pink from where she stood. Sir, I can... No, I'm done. He threw his napkin on the table. I'm done with this garbage food and this garbage service and this garbage... He looked at her, really looked at her. Diner. He stood up. His friends stood with him. You know what your problem is, Denise. She said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. People like you don't understand your place. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a quarter, tossed it on the table. 25 cents. For a meal that had been comped. For service that had been perfect. For a human being who had done nothing wrong. Maybe if you spent less time pretending you belong and more time knowing your place, you'd be worth something. He walked toward the door. She thought it was over. Dear God, she thought it was over. But Preston Harrington stopped, turned around, looked at her with eyes that saw her as less than human, less than animal, less than dirt. Actually, he said, loud, clear, making sure everyone in the diner could hear. Let me give you what you're really worth. And then he spit in her face. The saliva hit her left cheek, warm, wet, deliberate. It dripped toward her jaw, hung there like shame made visible. Time stopped. Everything stopped. Preston laughed. The sound filled the diner like poison gas. Chad laughed. Bryson kept recording. Gary stood frozen behind the counter doing nothing, saying nothing, being nothing. The other customers looked at their plates, looked at their coffee, looked anywhere except at the black woman standing in the middle of the diner with spit running down her face. And Denise. Denise stood there. Her hand rose halfway to wipe her cheek. Then it stopped. Frozen. Like she wasn't sure she had the right to clean herself. Like she wasn't sure she was allowed to remove the evidence of her own humiliation. Her eyes were wide, not with anger, not with rage, with something worse, shame. Complete and total shame. The shame of being treated like you're nothing and having nobody disagree. The shame of standing in a room full of people who all just watched you get spit on and did nothing. The shame of being 45 years old and 16 years at the same job and still not being worth enough for anyone to stand up for you. The tears came. She tried to stop them, tried to hold them back, but they came anyway, mixing with the spit on her cheek running down her face like surrender. Preston saw the tears. His smile widened. "Oh, are you crying? That's adorable. Maybe next time you'll remember who you're dealing with." He turned toward the door again. He was 3 steps away from leaving. 3 steps away from getting in his Mercedes and driving back to his mansion and bragging to his friends about the waitress he'd humiliated. 3 steps away from facing no consequences at all.
Then a chair scraped at table 9. The sound cut through the silence like a gunshot. Tank stood up. He didn't stand fast, didn't stand angry. He stood the way mountains move, the way earthquakes happen, slow and inevitable and absolutely unstoppable. "Oh, hell," Ghost whispered. "Here we go," Razor said. One by one, the other bikers rose. Bone, Preacher, Mama Bear, Ghost, Diesel, Chains, Doc, Little Mike, 9 people standing, becoming one. A wall of leather and muscle, and something that looked a lot like righteous fury. They didn't run toward Preston. They walked, boots heavy on the linoleum floor. Each step measured, each step deliberate, each step saying more than words ever could. Preston heard them, turned around. His smile flickered, just for a moment, just enough to show that somewhere behind all that privilege and cruelty, he understood that something had shifted. "What's this?" His voice was still arrogant, still condescending. But there was a crack in it now, a tiny fracture of uncertainty. The biker convention. Tank stopped 3 feet away from him, close enough to be a threat, far enough to be a choice. "You're going to apologize to Miss Denise." The words were quiet, almost gentle. That made them more terrifying than any shout could have been. Preston's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me. You heard me. You're going to apologize to that lady. Right now. And you're going to mean it. Do you know who my father is? Don't care who your daddy is. Don't care what he does or how much money he has or how many politicians owe him favors. None of that matters right now. What matters is what you just did." "What I just did, I didn't do anything. She's just a..." "Finish that sentence." Mama Bear stepped forward, 5'6", 140 pounds, looked like someone's grandmother, cracked her knuckles like she was getting ready for war. "Please, finish that sentence. I want to hear how it ends." Preston looked at his friends for backup. Chad had already lowered his sunglasses. His face was pale. He was edging toward the door. Bryson had stopped recording. The phone hung limp at his side. "My father is Senator Richard Harrington," Preston said. The words came out faster now, more desperate. "One phone call and this place gets shut down. One phone call and all of you are looking at assault charges, harassment, intimidation, whatever I say you did." Tank didn't blink. "Make the call." "What?" "You heard me. Make the call. Call your daddy. Tell him what happened. Tell him everything. I'll wait." "You think I won't. I think you will, and I think it won't matter. But go ahead, prove me wrong." Preston's hand was shaking as he pulled out his phone. His fingers trembled as he dialed. He put it on speaker because Tank's eyes told him to. 2 rings. "Preston." Senator Harrington's voice was tired, worn, the voice of a man who had received too many calls from this number about too many problems. "It's 6:50 in the morning. What now?" "Dad, I'm at this diner and there's bikers threatening me. I need you to..." "What did you do?" The question landed like a hammer. What did you do, Preston?" "Nothing. There's just this waitress who..." "What did you do to the waitress, Preston?" "Why do you always assume..." "Because you always do something." The senator's voice exploded through the phone speaker. Everyone in the diner heard it. Everyone saw Preston flinch like he'd been slapped. "Every time I get a call from you, Preston, every single time, you've done something. Something stupid, something cruel, something that I have to fix. I'm in the middle of preparing for a committee hearing. I don't have time for this." "Dad, just listen." "No, you listen. Handle it yourself. I'm done cleaning up your messes." "Dad." "You're 17 years old, Preston, not 7. Figure it out." The line went dead. Silence poured into the space where Preston's power used to be. His hand, still holding the phone, was shaking visibly now. His face had gone from arrogant to scared in the span of 30 seconds. He's busy," Preston said. "He'll call back." "No." Tank's voice was almost sad. "He won't. I've seen that look before, boy. That's the look of a father who's used up all his patience, used up all his hope. You're on your own now." "You can't... You don't..." Tank looked at Denise. She was still standing there, still frozen, still had spit on her face because she hadn't been able to bring herself to wipe it off. Something broke in Tank's expression, something that looked like grief. "Miss Denise," he said softly. "Come here." She didn't move. "It's okay. Come here." Slowly, like a woman walking through water, she moved toward table 9. Mama Bear reached out, took a clean napkin from the table, gently, so gently, wiped the spit and tears from Denise's face. "There you go, honey, there you go." "Why?" Denise's voice cracked. "Why are you—" "Because somebody had to." Tank turned back to Preston. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Miss Denise. Real apology. Loud enough for everyone in this diner to hear. You're going to mean it. And then we're going to talk about what comes next." "I'm not apologizing to—" Tank took one step forward. Just one step. But everything in that step, the weight, the certainty, the absolute refusal to back down, made Preston stumble 3 steps backward. "Let me tell you a story," Tank said. "About my mama." And the diner was silent, complete, absolute. Every person in the room was listening. "My mama was a maid, cleaned houses for white families in Birmingham for 35 years. One day, some businessman rich guy, probably a lot like your daddy, decided she hadn't cleaned his bathroom good enough, called her into his study, made her get on her hands and knees, made her scrub the same spot over and over while he stood there watching, calling her stupid, calling her lazy, calling her things I won't repeat in mixed company." Tank's voice was steady, controlled, but there was something underneath it, something that had been burning for decades. "She came home that night and cried until she couldn't breathe. I was 14, couldn't do a damn thing about it. Just sat there and watched my mama, strongest woman I ever knew, break apart because some rich man thought his money made him better than her." He paused. "She died 6 years later. Heart attack, they said. But I think her heart broke that day and just took a while to stop beating." Tank looked at Preston with eyes that held 40 years of rage and grief and a promise made over a grave. "I swore on her grave that I'd never let that happen again. Not where I could see it, not where I could stop it, not where I could stand up." He looked at Denise. "This woman has worked here 16 years. 16 years of early mornings and late nights and smiling at people who treat her like furniture. She's got a son at home with asthma. Can't afford the medicine that would help him, can't afford to fix her car, can't afford shoes without holes in them. And she shows up anyway, every single day. Shows up and serves people who never once wonder if she's okay." He turned back to Preston. "You spit on her, like she was nothing, like she was less than nothing. And now you're going to apologize. Or we're going to do this the other way." "What other way?" Razor held up his phone. "Your friend there filmed everything. The insults, the disrespect, the spit, all of it. I've been filming too. Already backed up to the cloud. Can't be deleted. Can't be erased." Preston's face went white. "That video goes viral, your life is over. Yale application rejected. Your daddy's political career destroyed. Every door that was going to open for you because of your last name slammed shut. Forever." "You wouldn't try us," Mama Bear said. "Please, try us." Preston looked around the diner. No help from his friends. They'd already fled out the back door. No help from the other customers. They were watching with expressions that ranged from shock to satisfaction. No help from Gary. He was hiding behind the register, pretending to count money. No help from anyone. For the first time in his 17 years of privileged existence, Preston Harrington III was completely alone. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. Louder. "I'm sorry." "Look at her when you say it." Preston turned to face Denise, for the first time really looked at her, saw the tears she was fighting, the exhaustion carved into her face, the dignity she was somehow maintaining despite everything he'd done. "I'm sorry," he said again. I was wrong." "That's a start," Tank said. "But words are cheap. Words don't cost you anything. You need to understand what you did, really understand, in your bones." "I said I'm sorry, what more?" "You're going to work here," the diner gasped. "What? 3 days, full shifts, minimum wage. You're going to put on an apron, and you're going to take orders, and you're going to serve food to people who treat you like you're invisible. You're going to stand where Miss Denise stands, feel what she feels, learn what she knows. You can't make me do that." "You're right, I can't make you do anything." Tank crossed his arms. But that video exists, and small towns talk, and the internet is forever. So you can work 3 days and learn something real, or you can spend the rest of your life being the kid who spit on a black woman and got away with it. He paused. Choose. Preston's shoulders dropped, his chin dropped. Everything about him that had been big and arrogant and cruel seemed to shrink under the weight of consequences he couldn't buy his way out of. Fine, he whispered. I'll do it. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Don't be late. Tank turned to Gary, who was still cowering behind the register. He shows up late, you call me. He disrespects anyone, you call me. He quits before his 3 days are up, you call me. Understood. Gary nodded so fast his whole body shook. Good. Tank looked at Preston one more time. Go home. Think about what you did. Think about who you want to be. Because right now, you're nobody worth knowing. The bikers stepped aside. They made a path to the door. Preston walked through it like a man walking to his own execution. Slow, defeated, broken in a way that might never fully heal. The Mercedes engine roared to life. Tires squealed. He was gone. The diner exploded into noise, everyone talking at once, phones coming out, people calling friends and family to tell them what they'd just witnessed. But Tank wasn't paying attention to any of that. He was looking at Denise. She was still standing by table 9, still trembling, still looking like she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. You okay? He asked. I don't understand. What's to understand? Nobody's ever... She stopped, started again. In 16 years, nobody's ever stood up for me. Not once. Why did you... Tank pulled out his wallet, took out $500 bills, laid them on the counter. That's not charity, he said. That's 7 years of tips we should have been giving you. 7 years of eating your cooking and drinking your coffee and taking up your tables. We owed you better. Mama Bear stepped forward, added another 100. For Malik's medicine. Then Razor, another 100. Then Bone, then Preacher, then Ghost, Diesel, Chains, Doc, Little Mike. By the time all 10 of them had contributed, there was $2,847 on the counter. Denise stared at the money like it might disappear if she blinked. I can't take this. Yes, you can, Mama Bear said firmly. Medicine, car repair, new shoes, whatever you need. But why would you... Tank put his hand on her shoulder, gentle, solid, like a father she'd never had. Because we take care of our own, he said, and you're one of ours now. The tears came again. But these were different tears, not tears of humiliation, not tears of shame, tears of being seen, being valued, being defended, tears of mattering. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. The bikers filed out slowly, one by one, engines starting in sequence, a rolling thunder that shook the windows and announced to everyone in town that something had changed. Something fundamental, something that couldn't be undone. They rode off into the morning, and Denise Williams stood in the diner she'd worked at for 16 years, holding more money than she'd saved in a decade, feeling something she hadn't felt in so long she'd forgotten its name. Hope. The diner was different after that. People looked at her differently, talked to her differently, refilled their own coffee when she was busy, said please and thank you like they meant it. Gary avoided her eyes for the rest of the shift, didn't give her any more orders, didn't criticize anything she did. At 10:30, she took her break, called the pharmacy. I need to pick up Malik's prescription, the expensive one, the one that actually works. That'll be $340, ma'am. Will you be paying cash or... Cash. I'll be there this afternoon. She hung up, pressed her palms against her eyes. Let herself feel it. Her son was going to be okay. Her son was going to breathe. Her son was going to live. Because 10 strangers decided that looking away wasn't acceptable. Because 10 strangers decided that her dignity was worth defending. Because 10 strangers proved that the world still had goodness in it, even when everything seemed dark.
At 2:30, her shift ended. She walked to the pharmacy, paid cash, held the bag with Malik's medicine like it was made of gold. Then she walked to the mechanic's shop. "I need my car fixed, the transmission." "That's $900, ma'am." "I know, I'll pay cash." The mechanic's eyebrows shot up, but he didn't ask questions, just wrote up the order and told her the car would be ready in 2 days. She walked to the shoe store, bought new shoes, real shoes, shoes without holes, shoes that didn't need newspaper stuffing. By the time she got home, she'd spent almost $1,400. She still had over $1,000 left, enough for rent, enough for groceries, enough for a little bit of breathing room. Enough. For the first time in years, she had enough. Malik was awake when she walked in, sitting up, looking better than he had in weeks. "Hey, Mama." "Hey, baby." She sat on his bed, pulled out the medication bag. Real medicine. The good kind. The doctor-recommended kind. His eyes went wide. "We can afford it." "Yeah, baby. We can afford it." "How?" She thought about Tank, about the bikers, about 10 strangers who saw her when everyone else looked away. "Some people," she said carefully, "are just good." That night she lay in bed and didn't cry. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't cry herself to sleep. The money would run out eventually. Money always does. But something had happened that morning that couldn't be measured in dollars. She'd been seen, defended, valued, and tomorrow Preston Harrington III was going to show up at that diner and learn what it felt like from the other side. She smiled in the dark. Outside her window, somewhere in Mississippi, 10 motorcycles sat in 10 different driveways. And in each one, a biker slept peacefully, knowing they'd done the right thing. Not because it was easy, not because they were heroes, but because somebody had to stand up. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Preston Harrington III did not sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling of his bedroom, replaying every moment of what had happened. The spit, the laughter, the look on his father's face when he'd hung up without even trying to help. Handle it yourself. Those 3 words burned worse than anything else, worse than the humiliation of being confronted by bikers, worse than the fear he'd felt when Tank stepped forward, worse than the knowledge that a video existed of him doing something he couldn't take back. His father had abandoned him. At 11:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. Text from Chad. "Bro, that video is everywhere. 200K views already. You're cooked." Preston's stomach dropped. He opened Twitter, searched his name. The video was the top trending topic in Mississippi. Rich senator's son spits on black waitress. Privileged teen gets confronted by bikers. Watch this racist kid get what he deserves. The comments were brutal, thousands of them, calling him every name he'd ever called anyone else, wishing things on him that made his skin crawl. He threw his phone across the room. At 2:14 a.m., his door opened. His mother stood there in her silk robe, holding a glass of wine she clearly wasn't drinking. Victoria Harrington, 52 years old, former beauty queen, professional politician's wife. "Your father told me what happened." Preston sat up. "Mom, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why my son thought it was acceptable to spit on another human being? She was just what, Preston? Just a waitress. Just black. Just poor. Finish the sentence. I want to hear you say it." He couldn't. Victoria walked into the room, sat on the edge of his bed. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying, but her voice was steady. "When I was 20 years old, I was a waitress." Preston's head snapped up. "What? Before I met your father? Before all of this?" She gestured at the massive bedroom, the expensive furniture, the life of privilege surrounding them. "I worked at a truck stop in Mobile, double shifts, bad tips, customers who treated me like I was invisible. You never told me that. Your father made me hide it, said it didn't fit the image we needed to project, said people wouldn't respect us if they knew I came from nothing." She took a sip of wine. "I let him erase that part of me, let myself forget what it felt like to be looked down on." "Mom." And now my son spits on a woman just like I used to be. Because I never taught him that where you come from doesn't determine what you're worth. The words hit Preston like physical blows. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. I'm not the one you spit on. Victoria stood up. You're going to that diner tomorrow. You're going to work your 3 days, and you're going to learn something I should have taught you years ago. What's that? That people are people, Preston. Rich or poor, black or white, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Everyone. She walked out. Preston didn't sleep after that. At 5:15 a.m. he got dressed. Jeans, plain t-shirt, no designer labels, no Rolex. He left the watch on his nightstand for the first time in 2 years. The drive to the diner took 20 minutes. His Mercedes felt wrong now. Too big, too expensive, too obvious. He pulled into the parking lot at 5:52 a.m. Bone was already there, leaning against his motorcycle, smoking a cigarette, watching. You showed up. Did you think I wouldn't? Thought about it 50-50. Bone dropped his cigarette, ground it out with his boot. Come on, Miss Denise is inside. The diner was already busy. Early morning crowd, farmers and truckers and nurses finishing night shifts, people who worked for a living, people who knew what it meant to struggle. Denise was behind the counter setting up coffee stations. She looked up when Preston walked in. Their eyes met. Preston felt his stomach twist. He'd spit on this woman. Less than 24 hours ago, he'd spit on her face and laughed about it. Morning, he said. The word came out weak, pathetic. Morning. Her voice was neutral, professional, the voice of someone who had learned to hide her feelings behind a mask of competence. You know how to tie an apron? No. Then learn. She tossed him a white apron. He fumbled with it, tried to figure out how the strings worked. Couldn't. Maria, another waitress, watched him struggle for 30 seconds before stepping in. Like this. She tied it quickly, efficiently. Tight in the back or it'll slip. Thanks. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Miss Denise. The hostility was clear, deserved. Preston nodded and said nothing. Gary appeared from the back office. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His face was pale and his hands were shaking. Okay, Preston, you'll be shadowing Denise today. You do what she says. Exactly what she says. No complaints, no attitude. Understood. Understood. And if any customers recognize you, just don't make it worse. Preston didn't know how to respond to that. At 6:00 a.m., exactly the first wave of breakfast customers arrived. Table 4 needs coffee, Denise said. You pour. I'll take orders. Preston grabbed the coffee pot, walked to table 4. An old black man sat there, newspaper open, reading glasses perched on his nose. Coffee, sir. The man looked up. His eyes narrowed. You're the Harrington boy. Every conversation in the diner stopped. Yes, sir. The one who spit on Denise. Preston's hand trembled on the coffee pot. Yes, sir. The old man folded his newspaper slowly, deliberately, like he was buying time to decide what to do. I've been coming to this diner for 40 years, knew it when it was whites only, knew it when Denise started working here, only black waitress they'd hire, watched white folks treat her like dirt every single day, and she just kept smiling, kept serving, kept showing up. He leaned forward. You spit on 40 years of that woman just trying to survive. 3 days in an apron don't fix that boy. Not even close. Preston had nothing to say. No defense. No excuse. Pour the coffee, the old man said, and try not to spill it. Preston poured. His hand shook so badly that coffee sloshed onto the table. Wipe that up. He used a napkin, cleaned it carefully. The old man watched him the entire time. Now get me some cream, real cream, not that fake stuff. Yes, sir. Preston walked to the counter. His face was burning. Every person in the diner was staring at him, judging him, remembering what he'd done. This was going to be the longest 3 days of his life. At 6:47 a.m., exactly 24 hours after he'd spit on Denise, the morning rush hit full force. Tables filled up, orders piled in, coffee needed refilling, plates needed carrying. Everything moved at a pace Preston had never experienced. Table 7 needs menus, Denise said. Table 9 needs water refills. Table 12 is ready to order. I can't. You can. Move. He moved. Table 7 got their menus. Table 9 got water. Table 12 placed their order, which Preston wrote down on a pad Denise had given him, his handwriting messy and desperate. 2 Western omelets, 1 stack of pancakes, 1 side of bacon coffee for all 3. He read back. That's right. Now take it to the kitchen. Give it to Marcus, he's the cook. Then come back and bus table 4. Bus? Clear the dishes. Wipe it down. Set it up for the next customer. Oh, okay. He took the order to the kitchen. Marcus, the cook, was a massive black man with arms like tree trunks and sweat pouring down his face. He took the order slip without looking at Preston. Heard about what you did. Yeah. Don't do it again. I won't. We'll see. Preston went back out, cleared table 4. The dishes were heavy, heavier than he expected. He carried them to the dish station and almost dropped the whole stack. Maria caught him. Easy. You break those, it comes out of your tips. I don't have any tips. Then it comes out of your paycheck. She took the dishes from him. Go. Table 6 needs coffee. He poured coffee, took orders, cleared tables, made mistakes. So many mistakes. At 7:23 a.m., he dropped his first plate. It shattered on the floor. Eggs and hash browns and broken ceramic everywhere. The diner went quiet. Someone in the back started a slow, mocking clap. Nice one, rich boy. Someone get the senator's kid a broom. Bet he's never cleaned anything in his life. Preston stood there, face burning, surrounded by the mess he'd made. Nobody helped him. Nobody moved. Then Denise appeared with a broom and dustpan. Clean it up, she said quietly. Then get back to work. He took the broom, got on his hands and knees, swept up every piece, wiped the floor with paper towels. His hands got dirty. His jeans got stained. When he stood up, Denise was watching him. That's the first useful thing you've done in your life. It wasn't a compliment, but it wasn't an insult either. It was just true. At 8:15 a.m., the news crews arrived. Preston saw them through the window. 2 vans, 3 cameras, reporters with microphones rehearsing their questions. Oh, God! Gary came running from the back. They can't come in. They can't. It's a public business, Maria said. You can't stop them. The front door opened. A reporter stepped in. Pretty, professional, hungry for a story. Preston Harrington, I'm Christine Park with Channel 7 News. Can we get a comment on... No. Denise stepped between them. He's working. You want to talk? You talk to me. Christine's eyes lit up. Miss Williams, perfect. Can we interview you about... Outside. You're blocking my customers. The reporter followed Denise out the front door. Preston watched through the window as Denise stood there, arms crossed, answering questions with the same calm dignity she'd shown when he spit in her face. He couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could see the reporter's expression change, soften, become something that looked almost like respect. The interview lasted 10 minutes. When Denise came back in, she didn't say anything to Preston, just went back to work. At 9:30 a.m., Preston's father arrived. The diner went dead silent. Senator Richard Harrington walked in like he owned the building. Suit perfectly pressed, hair perfectly styled. The face he wore for cameras and constituents. Preston, we need to talk. I'm working. Now. Tank appeared from table 9. Preston hadn't even noticed he was there. Boy's on shift. He leaves now, he doesn't come back. Senator Harrington turned. His political smile faltered slightly when he saw who was speaking. And you are the man who's making sure your son learns something you never taught him. I don't need a lecture from a... Careful. Tank's voice was soft, dangerous. Real careful about how you finish that sentence. The senator paused, recalculated. Preston, 5 minutes. Outside. Tank looked at Denise. She nodded slowly. 5 minutes, Tank said. Then he's back to work. Father and son walked out to the parking lot. The cameras swung toward them immediately. Senator Harrington positioned himself with his back to them, blocking their view of Preston. "What the hell are you doing?" "What you told me to do, handling it myself." "By working here, by making a spectacle of yourself. I didn't have a choice. They have a video. It's already everywhere." "I know about the video. My office has been flooded with calls. My donors are pulling support. There's a petition calling for my resignation with 50,000 signatures." "Dad, I'm sorry." "Are you?" The senator's mask slipped. For just a moment, Preston saw something real underneath, something exhausted, something broken. "Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Preston had no answer. "Your mother told me something last night." The senator's voice cracked. "Did you know she was a waitress before we met?" "She told me. I made her hide that. Made her ashamed of honest work. Made her pretend she came from money." He laughed. Bitter. Hollow. "And now my son spits on a woman just like her, because I never taught him that people matter more than portfolios. Dad, finish your 3 days. When you're done, we need to talk about who you're going to become, because right now—" He looked at Preston with eyes that held no recognition. "I don't know who you are, and I don't like what I see." He walked to his car. The cameras followed him, but he didn't answer their questions, just got in and drove away. Preston stood there for a long moment. Then he went back inside, back to work. At 10:45 a.m., he burned himself on the coffee pot. The metal handle had been sitting too close to the burner. He grabbed it without thinking, and the pain shot through his palm like fire. "Damn it!" He dropped the pot. Coffee splashed across the floor. Second mess in 4 hours. Maria was there in seconds. "Let me see." He held out his hand. Red, already blistering. "Cold water. Now." She pulled him to the sink, ran cold water over the burn. He stood there, hand under the stream, watching the breakfast rush continue around him like he didn't exist. "Hurts, doesn't it?" Maria said. "Yeah. Now imagine doing that every day for minimum wage, while customers yell at you, while managers blame you for things that aren't your fault, while you smile and say yes sir, yes ma'am because you need the tips to pay rent." She turned off the water, handed him a clean towel. "That's what Denise has done for 16 years, every single day. Burns and cuts and blisters and exhaustion, and she still shows up, still smiles, still treats people with respect, even when they don't deserve it." Preston looked at his burned hand. "I didn't know." "No, you didn't. Because people like you never do." At 11:30 a.m., a family came in. Mother, father, 2 kids, maybe 8 and 10, black, middle class. The kind of family that worked hard and played by the rules and still had to fight for everything they had. Preston was clearing a nearby table when the younger kid pointed at him. "Mama, that's him, the mean man from the video." Every head in the diner turned. The mother's face hardened. She pulled her daughter closer like Preston was a danger that needed to be guarded against. "Yes, baby, that's him." "Why did he do that to the lady?" Preston stopped, stood there, didn't run. "I don't know, baby. Some people think they're better than others because they have money or because of what they look like. They're wrong, but they think it anyway." The little girl looked at Preston with eyes that held no fear, just curiosity. "Are you sorry?" The question was so simple, so honest, a child's question cutting straight through all the excuses and justifications adults wrap themselves in. "Yes," Preston said. "I'm sorry." "Are you going to do it again?" "No, never." "Promise." "I promise." The girl studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, Mama says everybody gets one more chance, but only one." The mother's expression didn't soften, but she didn't leave either. They took a booth, ordered breakfast, ate in silence while Preston continued to work around them. When they left, the little girl waved at him. He waved back. Something cracked inside him, something that had been frozen solid for 17 years. It didn't break open completely, not yet, but the crack was there now, letting something in. At 12:15 p.m., the lunch rush hit, harder than breakfast, faster, more demanding. Preston's feet screamed, his back ached, his burned hand throbbed with every movement. He'd been on his feet for 6 hours straight. No breaks, no rest, no sitting down.
Table 3 needs refills. Table 7 is waiting on their check. Table 9 needs cleaning. Denise's voice was relentless. Not cruel, just professional, just doing her job the same way she'd done it for 16 years. Preston moved, refilled, delivered, cleaned, made mistakes, got yelled at, apologized, kept going. At 12:47 p.m., he almost quit. A customer, white, middle-aged, wearing a suit that probably cost more than the entire diner's weekly revenue, snapped his fingers at Preston like he was calling a dog. Hey you, more water. Preston's jaw tightened. He wanted to say something, wanted to tell this man exactly what he could do with his snapping fingers. But then he caught Denise's eye across the room. She didn't say anything, didn't nod, didn't give him any sign of encouragement. She just looked at him with those exhausted, dignified eyes, and Preston understood something he'd never understood before. This was her life. Every day, every shift, snapping fingers and condescending tones and being treated like she was less than human. And she kept going anyway. "Coming right up, sir?" He refilled the water, smiled, said, "Have a nice day." The customer didn't even acknowledge him. At 1:30 p.m., Tank came to the counter. "You're doing okay?" Preston looked up surprised. "Really?" Didn't say good. Said, "Okay, there's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Good means you've learned something. Okay means you haven't quit yet." Tank signaled for more coffee. "Most people like you would have walked out by now, called your daddy's lawyers, made this all go away." "I thought about it, but you didn't." "No, why not?" Preston considered the question, really considered it. "Because running away wouldn't change anything. The video would still exist. The words I said would still be real. I'd still be the person who spit on a woman and thought it was funny." He paused. "And because my mom told me something last night, about being a waitress, about hiding who she was, about being ashamed of honest work." Tank nodded slowly. "Your mama sounds like a smart woman." "I never knew that about her. Never knew she'd worked like this. My whole life I thought we were just better than other people, special, deserving. And now I'm not sure I know anything." Tank set down his coffee cup. "That's the first smart thing you've said since you walked in here." At 2:00 p.m., Preston's shift ended. 8 hours. On his feet. Burns and bruises and aching muscles, and a humiliation that went so deep he could feel it in his bones. Gary counted out his tips. $18. "That's it. That's it. You dropped one plate, burned yourself twice, got 3 orders wrong, and spilled coffee on the floor. You're lucky you got anything." Preston took the money, $18 for 8 hours of work, less than minimum wage when you factored in his mistakes. Denise had done this for 16 years. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Denise was already setting up for the afternoon shift, straightening silverware, refilling sugar dispensers, moving like a machine that never got to stop. "Miss Denise?" She looked up. "I'll be back tomorrow, 6 a.m. She held his gaze for a long moment. "We'll see." He walked out into the parking lot. The news vans were gone. The cameras were gone. The world had moved on to the next outrage, the next scandal, the next story to consume and forget. But Preston hadn't moved on. He sat in his Mercedes for 20 minutes, just sat there, looking at his $18, looking at his burned hand, feeling every ache in his body. Then he drove home. His mother was in the kitchen when he arrived, actually cooking, something she hadn't done in years. How was it? Hard. He sat down at the island. Harder than anything I've ever done. Good. I dropped a plate, burned myself, got yelled at by customers, made so many mistakes I lost count. Good. Why do you keep saying good? Victoria turned from the stove. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. Because you're learning, because you stayed, because you didn't run away and hide behind your father's money. She set a plate in front of him. Grilled cheese, something simple, something real. That's more than I expected, more than your father expected. Where is Dad? At the office, doing damage control. She sat across from him. The video has 12 million views now. His biggest donor called this morning, said he's pulling all support unless your father denounces you publicly. Preston's stomach dropped. What's he going to do? I don't know. But whatever he decides, it's not going to change what you need to do. What's that? Finish what you started. Go back tomorrow. And the next day. Earn something for the first time in your life. Preston ate his grilled cheese in silence. It tasted better than anything he'd eaten in years. At 8:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. Text from his father. Press conference tomorrow, 10 a.m. Need you there. Preston stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back. I have to work. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. This isn't optional, Preston. My career is on the line. Preston typed slowly, carefully. I made a commitment. 3 days. I'm going to finish them. If you want to talk, we can talk after. His father didn't respond. At 4:30 a.m., Preston woke up without an alarm. His body hurt everywhere. Muscles he didn't know existed were screaming. His burned hand had blistered overnight. His feet felt like they'd been beaten with hammers. He got dressed anyway, drove to the diner anyway, walked in at 5:52 a.m., same time as yesterday. Bone was there again, same spot, same cigarette. Day 2. Day 2. Your daddy's going to be real mad you're not at his press conference. I know. You sure about this? Preston thought about the little girl who'd asked if he was sorry, about his mother's red eyes and quiet pride, about Tank's words. That's the first smart thing you've said. Yeah, I'm sure. He walked inside. Denise was already there, same position as yesterday, setting up for another day. She looked at him, just looked. No words, no judgment, just acknowledgement that he'd shown up again. Apron's where you left it. He tied it himself this time, tied in the back, just like Maria had showed him. What do you need? Coffee's running low. Table 9 needs wiping. We got a church group coming in at 7, party of 15. It's going to be busy. I'm ready. She almost smiled. Almost. We'll see. The morning rush hit harder than the day before. More customers, more orders, more chaos. But Preston was ready for it. He moved faster, made fewer mistakes, anticipated what Denise needed before she asked. When he burned himself on the coffee pot again, he didn't even flinch. Just ran cold water for 10 seconds and got back to work. At 10:00 a.m., his father's press conference started. Someone had turned on the TV above the counter. Every eye in the diner was watching. Senator Richard Harrington stood at a podium, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. I want to address the incident involving my son, the senator began. What happened at that diner was inexcusable. The actions shown in that video do not represent the values I've tried to instill in my family. Preston stood frozen coffee pot in hand, watching his father talk about him like he wasn't real, like he was a problem to be managed instead of a son to be raised. I have spoken with Preston, and he understands the severity of his actions. He is currently serving a 3-day community service commitment at the establishment where the incident occurred. Community service. That's what his father was calling it. Not punishment, not learning. Community service, like it was a box to check on a form. I want to apologize to Miss Williams and to everyone who was hurt by my son's behavior. We can do better. We will do better. The press conference ended. The diner was silent. Then an old woman at table 4 spoke up. That man didn't apologize for nothing. He apologized to save his career. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Preston set down the coffee pot. She's right. Every eye turned to him. My father's apology was political. It was about damage control, not about making things right. He looked at Denise. The only apology that matters is the one I give. And I'm going to keep giving it. Not with words, with work, with showing up, with being better. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then the old woman at table 4 nodded slowly. Talk is cheap, boy. Show us. Preston picked up the coffee pot. Yes, ma'am. At 2:00 p.m., his shift ended. Gary counted out his tips.
$34, almost double what he'd made the day before. "Better," Gary said. "Still not good, but better." Preston took the money, folded it carefully, put it in his pocket. "Same time tomorrow. 6 a.m. Don't be late." He walked out into the parking lot. Tank was leaning against his motorcycle waiting. "Your daddy's press conference didn't mention you were here." "No? Probably figured it would look bad. Senator's son working at a diner, not the image he wants to project." "Probably." Tank lit a cigarette, took a long drag. "You know what the difference is between you and him." "What?" "He's worried about how this looks. You're worried about what it means." Tank exhaled smoke into the afternoon air. "That's progress. Is it enough?" "Not yet, but you've got one more day." Preston nodded, got in his car, drove home. That night he counted his tips. $52 total for 2 days of work. He'd spent more than that on lunch last week without thinking about it. He put the money in an envelope, wrote Denise on the outside. Tomorrow he'd give it to her. Not because it would fix anything, because it was the right thing to do. At 5:45 a.m. on day 3, Preston pulled into the diner parking lot for the last time. But something was different. Smoke was pouring from the back of the building. Preston was out of his car before he knew what he was doing, running toward the diner, pushing through the back door. The kitchen was on fire. Small fire. Grease fire. Started in the fryer. Marcus was trying to put it out with a fire extinguisher, but the flames were spreading. "Get out!" Marcus shouted. "Get everyone out!" Preston didn't think. He ran through the diner shouting, "Fire everyone out! Fire in the kitchen!" Denise was already moving guiding customers toward the front door. Maria was grabbing the cash register. Gary was frozen, staring at the smoke, like he couldn't process what was happening. "Gary?" Preston grabbed his arm. "We have to go." He pulled Gary toward the door, pushed him outside, went back in. "Preston!" Denise's voice cut through the smoke. "Get out!" "Is everyone out?" "I think wait. Where's Mrs. Patterson?" The old woman from table 4, the one who'd told Preston to show her. Preston ran toward the back booths, found her there coughing confused, trying to stand on legs that wouldn't cooperate. "Come on, I've got you." He lifted her. She barely weighed anything. He carried her through the smoke past the kitchen, out the front door, into the fresh Mississippi morning air. Fire trucks were already arriving. Someone had called 911. Preston set Mrs. Patterson down on the curb. She was coughing, but conscious. "You okay?" She grabbed his arm, looked at him with rheumy eyes. "You came back for me." "Of course I did." "Why?" He didn't have to think about the answer. "Because you're a person, and people matter." Mrs. Patterson's grip tightened. "Maybe you learned something after all." The fire department put out the flames in 20 minutes. The damage was contained to the kitchen. Grease fire just like Marcus had thought. Old equipment, bad wiring. Could have happened any time. But it happened on Preston's last day, and he'd been there. At 11:00 a.m., everyone gathered in the parking lot. The diner was closed, yellow tape across the doors, insurance adjusters already arriving with clipboards and cameras. Gary was on the phone, voice shaking. "How long to repair? 6 weeks. What am I supposed to do for 6 weeks? Denise stood apart from everyone else, arms crossed, face unreadable. Preston walked over to her. "What happens now?" "I don't know. Gary doesn't have the money to repair it. Insurance might cover some, but not all. And even if he fixes it—" She shrugged. "Might not be worth coming back." "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about what those bikers did, about the money they gave me, about what it might mean if I didn't just survive, but actually built something." Preston felt something shift, something important. "What are you thinking?" Denise looked at him, for the first time really looked at him. Not as the boy who'd spit on her, not as the senator's son, just as a person. "I'm thinking maybe it's time for a change." She reached into her apron pocket, pulled out the envelope Preston had put there that morning, the one with $52 and Denise written on the outside. "This yours. It's my tips, from both days. I wanted you to have it." "Why?" "Because you deserve it more than I do." Denise opened the envelope, counted the money, $52, a pittance, Less than nothing compared to what the Harrington family was worth, but it meant something. "Thank you," she said. "It's not enough. I know it's not enough." "No, it's not." She put the money in her pocket. "But it's a start." Tank appeared beside them. The other bikers were gathered behind him, all 10 of them, same leather vests, same hard eyes, same quiet dignity. "Miss Denise, we've been talking." "About what?" "About what comes next. About that money we gave you. About what you could build if you had the chance." Denise's expression shifted. "What are you saying?" "We're saying we want to help. Not just with money, with work, with time, with whatever you need to make something real." Preston watched the exchange. Something was happening here, something bigger than a fire or a 3-day punishment or a viral video, something like hope. "I don't know how to run a restaurant," Denise said. "You've been running this one for 16 years, Tank replied. "Gary just took the credit." Denise laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was surprising and beautiful and real. "Maybe you're right. So what do you say? You ready to stop surviving and start building?" Denise looked at the diner, at the smoke damage and the yellow tape and the life she'd lived for 16 years. Then she looked at Tank, at the bikers, at Preston. "Yeah," she said, "I'm ready." Preston stepped forward. "Can I help?" The question hung in the air. Everyone waited for Denise's answer. She studied him for a long moment. This boy who'd spit on her 3 days ago, who'd shown up anyway, who'd worked through burns and humiliation and exhaustion, who'd carried an old woman through a fire because it was the right thing to do. "Why would you want to help?" "Because 3 days isn't enough, because I have a lot more to learn, because—" He paused, swallowed, spoke the truth he'd been avoiding. "Because I want to be someone worth knowing, and I can't do that by going back to who I was." Denise's expression didn't soften, but something in her eyes changed. "Every Tuesday," she said, 6 a.m., you show up, you work, you learn, no cameras, no press conferences, no credit." "Deal." She held out her hand. Preston shook it. And somewhere in that handshake, in that moment in that parking lot filled with smoke and hope and the possibility of redemption, something changed. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. Enough to matter. 6 weeks passed like a slow hurricane. The diner stayed closed. Yellow tape stretched across the doors like a warning. Insurance adjusters came and went. Contractors submitted estimates that made Gary's face go pale. But something else was happening. Something nobody expected. Denise Williams was building an empire. It started small. A conversation with Tank in the parking lot of the burned diner. A napkin with numbers scribbled on it. A dream that had been buried so deep she'd forgotten it existed. "You're serious about this," Tank said on that first morning after the fire. "I've been serious my whole life, just never had anyone who believed it." "We believe it. Question is, do you—" Denise looked at the diner. 16 years of her life behind those smoke-stained windows. 16 years of yes sir and no ma'am and smiling when she wanted to scream. "Yeah, I believe it." Tank nodded. "Then let's get to work." The Iron Brotherhood pooled their resources. 15 motorcycle clubs across Mississippi contributed. Word spread through channels Denise didn't understand, networks of leather and chrome and brotherhood that stretched across state lines. By the end of the first week, they had $47,000. "That's not enough," Denise said when Tank told her the number. "Not for a real restaurant, not for something that lasts." "It's a start, and starts are what matter." At 7:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the fire, Preston Harrington showed up. He drove a Honda Civic now, used, 10 years old, bought with money he'd earned working construction with Bones' crew. The Mercedes was gone, sold. His father had frozen his trust fund. His mother had given him $2,000 and told him to figure it out. He was figuring it out. "You're early," Denise said. She was standing in an empty storefront on East Pine Street, former hardware store, dusty, broken, full of possibility. "Wanted to see the space." "Not much to see yet." "I know, but I wanted to see it anyway." Denise studied him. 3 weeks since the fire. 3 weeks since he'd shaken her hand and promised to show up every Tuesday. He'd kept that promise. Worked construction. Learned to swing a hammer. Learned to carry his weight. You're different. I'm trying to be. Trying's not the same as being. I know, but it's all I've got right now. She handed him a broom. Start sweeping. We've got a lot of dust to clear. Preston took the broom. Started sweeping. Didn't complain. Didn't ask questions. Just worked. Denise watched him for a moment. Then she went back to measuring walls. At 9:30 a.m., Tank arrived with news. Got a problem. Denise set down her measuring tape. What kind of problem? The building inspector. Name's Howard Fletcher. He's been on Senator Harrington's payroll for 15 years. Preston stopped sweeping. What does that mean? Means your daddy's trying to shut this down before it starts. Fletcher's already been asking questions, looking for reasons to deny permits. Denise's jaw tightened. He can't do that. The building's up to code. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what he says is true. And right now he's saying there's structural problems, safety issues, things that need expensive repairs before he'll sign off. How expensive? Tank's face was grim. $60,000 expensive. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Denise sat down on an overturned bucket. The dream that had seemed so possible 3 weeks ago suddenly felt impossible again. We don't have that kind of money. I know. So what do we do? Tank looked at Preston. Your daddy's doing this. You got any way to stop him? Preston's face was pale. He's not speaking to me. Hasn't since I sold the car and moved out. Moved out? I'm staying with Bone, sleeping on his couch, working construction to pay for food. Preston's voice was steady, but there was pain underneath it. My father made it clear. I'm either with him or against him, and I chose against. Denise stared at him. You gave up everything. I gave up things. Not everything. Everything is what I'm trying to build now. Tank was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. I know someone. Journalist. She's been investigating Senator Harrington for years. Never had enough to go public. But if we give her this, the building inspector, the permits, the corruption, maybe she runs with it. That's a big maybe. Big maybes are all we've got right now. At 2:00 p.m., Christine Park walked into the empty storefront. Same reporter who'd covered the original video. Same sharp eyes, same hungry expression. Miss Williams, good to see you again. Wish I could say the same. Last time you showed up, my life got a lot more complicated. Fair enough, but this time I'm here to help. Christine pulled out a folder. I've been investigating Senator Harrington for 3 years. Corruption, bribery, abuse of power. But every time I get close, witnesses disappear. Documents get lost. Sources go silent. What's different now? Now he's made a mistake. The building inspector thing is clumsy, desperate. And I've got documents. She spread papers across an overturned crate. Payments from Harrington to Fletcher going back 8 years. Approvals for projects that should have been denied. Denials for projects that should have been approved. A pattern of corruption that's going to blow this thing wide open. Denise looked at the papers. Bank statements, emails, internal memos, a paper trail that led straight to the senator's office. Where did you get these? Christine smiled. I have my sources. Tank stepped forward. What do you need from us? I need Miss Williams to go on camera, tell her story, talk about the permits, talk about the harassment, give a face to the corruption. And if I do that, what happens to the senator? He goes down, hard. His career ends. His reputation is destroyed. Everything he's built comes crashing down. Denise looked at Preston. He was standing in the corner. Face unreadable. The son of the man they were about to destroy. What do you think? Preston was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. My father made his choices. He chose power over people, money over morality, his career over his family. Preston met Denise's eyes. Whatever happens to him, he earned it. Don't let me be the reason you hold back. You sure? No, but I'm sure about what's right, and this is right. Denise turned back to Christine. When do we start? At 6:47 p.m., exactly 4 weeks after Preston had spit on Denise's face, the interview aired. Every television in Mississippi was tuned to Channel 7. Denise sat in front of the camera wearing her best dress, speaking with the same quiet dignity she'd shown when saliva was dripping down her cheek. He spit on me because he thought he could, because he thought people like me don't matter. And when I tried to build something for myself, his father tried to shut it down, because people like them don't want people like me to succeed. They want us to stay in our place. The camera cut to documents, bank statements, emails, the paper trail Christine had assembled. Senator Harrington has been using his position to punish people who stand up to his family. The building inspector who denied my permits has received over $200,000 from Harrington's office over the past 8 years. This isn't democracy. This is dictatorship. The interview ran for 12 minutes. By the time it ended, the senator's office was flooded with calls. By midnight, 3 other victims had come forward with similar stories. By morning, the FBI had opened an investigation. At 8:15 a.m. the next day, Senator Richard Harrington held a press conference. Preston watched it alone in Bones' living room, coffee going cold in his hands, heart beating too fast. I am announcing my immediate resignation from the United States Senate. The words hit Preston like a physical blow. His father continued, voice shaking with barely controlled rage. The allegations against me are baseless, political attacks designed to destroy a man who has served his state with honor for 23 years. But I refuse to let my enemies use my family as a weapon. I will fight these charges. I will clear my name, and I will expose the conspiracy that has brought me to this moment. He didn't mention Preston, not once. His son had become a non-person, erased from the family history like he'd never existed. Preston set down his coffee, walked outside, got on his motorcycle, a used Harley he'd bought with construction money, and rode to the storefront on East Pine Street. Denise was already there, watching the same press conference on her phone. "I'm sorry," she said when she saw him. "For what? For your father. For what this is going to do to your family." Preston shook his head. "Don't be sorry. He did this to himself. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Seeing it now is what matters." They stood there for a moment. 2 people who should have been enemies. 2 people who had found something unexpected in the wreckage of what they used to be. "You ready to work?" Denise asked. Preston picked up his hammer. "Yeah, I'm ready." The next 3 months were a blur of construction and chaos. Walls came down. New walls went up. Plumbing was installed. Electrical was rewired. The empty storefront slowly transformed into something that looked like a restaurant. The Iron Brotherhood showed up every weekend. 15, 20, sometimes 30 bikers with hammers and saws and a determination that surprised everyone, including themselves. "Why are you doing this?" Denise asked Tank one afternoon as they surveyed the progress. "Told you before, we take care of our own." "I'm not one of you." A Tank smiled. "You've been one of us since the day you didn't back down, since the day you stood there with spit on your face and kept your dignity anyway. That's the kind of strength we respect. That's the kind of person we fight for." At 7:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning 4 months after the fire, something unexpected happened. Victoria Harrington walked into the construction site. She was alone, no security, no entourage, just a woman in expensive clothes standing in the middle of sawdust and chaos. Denise saw her first. "Can I help you?" Victoria looked around, taking in the progress, the half-finished walls, the new equipment waiting to be installed. "I came to see what my son has been building." Preston emerged from the back carrying drywall. He stopped when he saw his mother. "Mom." "Hello, sweetheart." They stood there for a long moment, mother and son, separated by choices and consequences and a chasm that seemed impossible to cross. "What are you doing here?" "Your father's trial started last week. The evidence is overwhelming. His lawyers are telling him to plead guilty. He refuses." Victoria's voice was calm, too calm. "I've filed for divorce." Preston set down the drywall.
What? I've spent 30 years pretending to be someone I'm not, hiding where I came from, being ashamed of honest work. I'm done pretending. She reached into her purse, pulled out an envelope. This is $50,000. It's mine. From before I married your father. Money I saved from waitressing and hid away because I always knew somewhere deep down that this day would come. Denise took the envelope, opened it, stared at the check inside. I can't accept this. You can, and you will, because I know what it's like to be you. I know what it's like to serve people who look through you like you're invisible. I know what it costs to smile when you want to scream. Victoria looked at Denise with eyes that held 30 years of hidden pain. You're building something real, something that matters. Let me be part of it. Denise was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at Preston. Is this okay with you? Preston nodded slowly. Yeah, it's okay. Victoria turned to her son. I'm proud of you. I should have said that months ago. I should have said it years ago. I was too busy being Mrs. Senator Harrington to remember how to be your mother. Mom, no, let me finish. What you've done, leaving everything behind, starting over, building something with your own hands, that's more than your father ever did. More than I ever did. And I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to teach you this sooner. Preston crossed the dusty floor, hugged his mother for the first time in months, maybe years. It's okay, Mom. We're all learning. Denise watched them, mother and son holding each other amid the sawdust and chaos. Then she tucked the check into her pocket. Thank you, both of you. Victoria pulled back from Preston, wiped her eyes. So, what do you need? I'm not afraid to get dirty. Denise handed her a paintbrush. Start with the back wall, primer first, then we'll talk about colors. Victoria Harrington, former beauty queen, former senator's wife, former professional pretender, rolled up her sleeves and got to work. At 11:45 a.m., Tank arrived with more news. The building inspector caved, Fletcher's cooperating with the FBI in exchange for reduced charges. All permits have been approved. Denise set down her paintbrush. We're cleared. We're cleared. Final inspection is next week. If everything checks out, you can open in 30 days. 30 days! After everything that had happened, the spit, the fire, the corruption, the investigation, they were 30 days away from opening. We're not going to make it, Denise said. There's too much left to do. The kitchen isn't finished. The dining room needs flooring. We don't even have a menu yet. Then we work faster, Preston said. Call everyone. Everyone who offered to help. Everyone who said they believed in this. Call them all. Tank was already on his phone. I'll get the word out. Every club in the state. Every friend we've got. The next 30 days were a marathon. People came from everywhere. Bikers and teachers and nurses and construction workers. People who had seen the video. People who had followed the story. People who wanted to be part of something that felt like justice. Malik came every day after school, 12 years old now, healthy, strong, working alongside his mother with a pride that showed in every movement. You're doing good, baby, Denise told him one evening as they installed the final booth. I want to help. I want to see it finished. It'll be finished, soon. And then what? Then we open. Then we serve food. Then we build something that lasts. Malik was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been on his mind for months. Are you happy, Mama? Denise stopped what she was doing, really thought about the question. Yeah, baby, I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I think I really am. At 5:30 a.m. on opening day, Denise stood in her restaurant. Her restaurant. The words still felt foreign, still felt impossible. But here she was, standing in a space she owned, surrounded by equipment she'd chosen, preparing to serve food from recipes she'd perfected over 16 years of cooking for other people. The sign outside read, Table 9, Tank's Idea, a tribute to the booth where everything had changed. The front door opened. Tank walked in, then Bone, then Preacher, then Mama Bear, then all the rest. 10 bikers, same as always, taking their places at the big booth in the corner. Table 9, Tank said. Reserved forever. Reserved forever, Denise agreed.
Behind them came more people. Victoria Harrington, in an apron ready to work the floor, Maria from the old diner, now head waitress, Marcus the cook, now head chef, and Preston. He walked in last, still wearing his work clothes, still carrying the calluses of months of construction, still looking like someone who had lost everything and found something better. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." At 600 a.m., Denise opened the doors of Table 9. The line stretched around the block. People who had seen the video, people who had followed the story, people who wanted to be part of something that felt like redemption. They came in waves. Farmers and teachers and nurses and truckers, black and white and everything in between, old and young, rich and poor, all of them sitting down together in a restaurant owned by a woman who had been spit on 5 months ago. At 8:47 a.m., a little girl walked up to the counter. Same little girl from Rosie's diner, the one who had asked Preston if he was sorry. She looked around at the busy restaurant, at the people eating, at the staff moving with practiced efficiency. "Is this your place, Miss Denise?" "Yeah, baby, this is my place. It's pretty. Thank you." The little girl looked at Preston, who was busying a nearby table. "You're still here." "Still here." "Are you still sorry?" Preston set down the dishes he was carrying, knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Yeah, I'm still sorry. I'll probably be sorry for the rest of my life. But you're still helping every day." The little girl nodded slowly, satisfied. "Okay, my mama wants pancakes." "Coming right up." The morning rush was chaos. Beautiful, profitable, overwhelming chaos. By noon, they'd served over 200 customers. By 200 p.m., they'd run out of pancake batter twice and had to send Malik to the store for more eggs. By 300 p.m., Denise was exhausted. But it was a different kind of exhaustion. Not the bone-deep weariness of surviving, the satisfied tiredness of building something that mattered. At 400 p.m., the door opened one more time. Denise looked up. Senator Richard Harrington stood in the doorway. The restaurant went silent. He looked different, smaller somehow. The trial was not going well. The evidence was overwhelming. His lawyers had finally convinced him to plead guilty to 3 counts of corruption. He was looking at 5 to 7 years in federal prison. But he wasn't here about that. He was looking at his son. Preston. Preston stopped what he was doing, walked toward his father, stopped about 10 feet away. "Dad, I came to see. I heard about the restaurant. Wanted to see what you've been doing." And Richard Harrington looked around, at the crowded tables, at the happy customers, at the staff working together with obvious pride. "It's impressive. I didn't think you had it in you." "You never thought I had anything in me. That was the problem. I was trying to prepare you. For the world. For politics. For being like you." Preston's voice was flat. "That's what you were preparing me for. Being ruthless, being selfish, being willing to hurt people if it got me what I wanted." "I was trying to protect you." "No, you were trying to create a copy of yourself. And when I refused, you threw me away." The restaurant was completely silent now. Every customer watching, every staff member frozen. Richard Harrington's face crumbled. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and underneath it was something nobody had seen in years. Fear, regret, a desperate loneliness that came from building a life on power instead of love. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Preston stared at his father. The man who had taught him that money meant everything, the man who had hung up on him when he needed help, the man who had frozen his trust fund and cut him off without a second thought. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Preston said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can tell you this, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not the person you raised. I'm not the person who spit on Miss Denise because I thought I was better than her. That person is dead, and whoever I'm becoming, he's better." Richard Harrington nodded slowly. His eyes were wet. "I'm proud of you." "I know. That's why you came." Will you visit when I'm—" He couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't say the word prison out loud. Preston was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe, if you earn it." "How do I earn it?" Preston looked at Denise. She nodded. "You start by apologizing to her. Not a political apology, Not a press conference, a real apology. Eye to eye, human to human. Richard Harrington walked to the counter, stood in front of Denise. This man, this powerful, corrupt, broken man, the father of the boy who had humiliated her, the orchestrator of the scheme to destroy her dream, standing in front of her now with nothing left but the truth. Miss Williams, I'm sorry for everything my family has done to you, for the spit, for the permits, for trying to shut you down, for every moment of pain we caused. Denise studied him, this man who had never seen her as a person, who had seen her only as a problem to be managed, an obstacle to be overcome. I forgive you, she said. Richard's eyes widened. You do. I do. Not because you deserve it. Because I deserve peace. Because carrying anger is too heavy. Because forgiveness is for me, not for you. She turned back to her work. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a restaurant to run. Richard Harrington stood there for another moment. Then he walked out the door. He would plead guilty the next week. Receive a sentence of 6 years in federal prison. Lose everything he had spent his life building. But something had changed in that restaurant. Something small. Something that might in time grow into something bigger. At 8:00 p.m., Table 9 closed for the night. The staff gathered in the dining room. Exhausted. Happy. Covered in flour and grease and the evidence of a day well worked. Denise stood at the front of the room. We did it. Day 1, 437 customers, 0 complaints, a few mistakes, but nothing we couldn't fix. Cheers erupted. But this is just the beginning. One day doesn't make a restaurant. One day doesn't build a legacy. We have to show up tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. We have to be better than good. We have to be great. She looked around at the faces watching her. Tank and the bikers, Victoria and Maria, Marcus and the kitchen staff, Malik half asleep in a booth too tired to keep his eyes open, and Preston, standing in the back, wearing an apron stained with a day's worth of work. We're building something here, something that matters, something that proves what happens when people stand up for each other, when they refuse to look away, when they decide that dignity isn't optional. She raised her glass of sweet tea. To Table 9, to all of us, to showing up. To showing up, everyone echoed. They drank together, laughed together, cleaned up together. And when the last light was turned off and the last door was locked, Denise Williams stood in the parking lot of her restaurant, and let herself feel it. Pride, joy, hope, the kind of hope that doesn't fade when morning comes, the kind that grows stronger with every day that passes. She was 45 years old, single mother, former waitress, owner of Table 9, and she was just getting started. 3 months after opening day, Table 9 became the most talked about restaurant in Mississippi. Not because of the food, though the food was exceptional. Not because of the service, though the service was flawless, but because of what it represented. A woman who had been spit on rising up, a community that had stood together, a story that proved redemption was possible. At 6:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Denise arrived at the restaurant to find a line already forming. We don't open until 7, she called out. We know, an elderly black woman responded. We're willing to wait. Denise unlocked the door, started the coffee, began the prep work that had become as natural as breathing. Preston arrived at 6:30, same time every Tuesday, same Honda Civic, same work clothes. Line's getting longer, he said. I noticed. We need more staff, more tables, more everything. I know. Denise poured herself coffee, looked at the spreadsheets she'd been studying the night before. We're profitable. First time in 3 months, we're actually making money instead of losing it. But if we want to grow, we need capital. How much? $200,000, minimum. To expand into the space next door. Add a kitchen, hire staff. Preston was quiet, thinking. I might know someone. Who? My grandmother. Denise set down her coffee. Your grandmother? Laura Harrington, my father's mother. She's the only one in the family who never went along with his politics, never approved of how he raised me. She's got money, her own money, and she's been asking about you. Asking about me? She saw the video, saw the interview, followed the whole story. She called me last week, said she wanted to meet you. Denise was silent for a long moment. I don't know, Preston. Taking money from Harrington's hasn't exactly worked out well for me in the past. My grandmother isn't my father. She's different. I promise. That's what your mother said. And she turned out okay, but just meet her. One conversation. If you don't like what she has to say, walk away. Denise looked at the spreadsheets again, the numbers that didn't add up, the expansion that couldn't happen without help. Fine, one conversation. At 2:30 p.m. that afternoon, Laura Harrington walked into Table 9. She was 83 years old, small, frail, but her eyes were sharp and her voice was steady. Miss Williams. Mrs. Harrington. Please, call me Laura. Mrs. Harrington was my mother-in-law, and that woman was a terror. Despite herself, Denise smiled. Can I get you something coffee tea? Coffee, black, and a piece of that pecan pie I've heard so much about. Denise served her personally, sat across from her in a booth near the window. My grandson tells me you need money. I need capital. There's a difference. Laura's eyebrows rose. Is there? Money is charity. Capital is investment. I'm not looking for someone to save me. I'm looking for a partner. Laura took a bite of pie, chewed slowly, swallowed. This is the best pecan pie I've ever tasted. Thank you. My daughter-in-law Victoria was a waitress. Did Preston tell you that? He mentioned it. What he probably didn't mention is that I'm the one who found out about it. 3 years into her marriage to my son, I was going through some old papers trying to find something for a charity event, and I found her original job application, the one from before she became Mrs. Richard Harrington. Denise waited. I could have exposed her, could have ruined her. That's what my husband would have done. That's what my son would have done. But I didn't. Why not? Because I was a waitress too, 50 years ago, before I married into this family, before I became Laura Harrington, wife of Senator James Harrington, mother of Senator Richard Harrington. I was Laura Chen, daughter of Chinese immigrants, working at a diner in San Francisco to pay for nursing school. Denise stared at her. I had no idea. Nobody does. I've spent 50 years hiding it, 50 years being ashamed of where I came from, 50 years watching my son become everything I swore I'd never let him become. Laura's voice cracked. When I saw that video, when I saw what my grandson did to you, something broke inside me. The same thing that broke when I watched my son turn into a monster. The same thing that broke when I realized I'd spent my whole life being a coward. Mrs. Harrington. Laura, you don't owe me anything. No, but I owe myself. I owe the girl I used to be. The girl who worked double shifts and dreamed of building something real. Laura reached into her purse, pulled out a check, slid it across the table. $500,000, not a loan, an investment. I want 20% ownership. I want a seat on your board, and I want to work here. Denise looked at the check. Her hands were shaking. Work here. 3 days a week. Whatever you need. Hosting, cleaning, serving. I don't care. I want to remember what it feels like to be useful, to be real, to be the person I was before I let money and power corrupt everything I touched. You're 83 years old, and I've got maybe 10 years left if I'm lucky. I can spend them sitting in my mansion watching the world go by, or I can spend them doing something that matters. Laura's eyes were wet. Please, let me do something that matters. Denise picked up the check, stared at the number. $500,000, enough to expand, enough to grow, enough to build something that could last. Okay. But I've got conditions. You don't get to swoop in and take over. This is my restaurant, my vision, my rules. You're an investor and an employee, not a boss. Laura smiled, the first real smile Denise had seen from her. Deal. They shook hands, and Table 9 entered a new phase. At 7:45 a.m. 3 weeks later, construction began on the expansion. The space next door was gutted, Walls came down, new equipment arrived. The Iron Brotherhood showed up every weekend just like they had before, hammers in hand and determination in their eyes. But there were problems. At 10:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning, Tank pulled Denise aside. "We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Some of Gary's old staff, the ones who didn't come with you when you left. They've been talking." "Talking about what?" "About how you stole his business, how you used the fire as an excuse to take everything, how the bikers intimidated him into backing off." Denise's jaw tightened. "That's not what happened." "I know, you know. But people who want to believe the worst, they're listening." "Who's behind it?" Tank was quiet for a moment. "Howard Fletcher, the building inspector. He's out on bail, facing federal charges, and he's got nothing left to lose." "What's he trying to do?" "Turn public opinion against you. Make it look like you're the villain, not the victim. He's got a lawyer putting together some kind of lawsuit, claiming you slandered him in that interview." Denise felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Everything she'd built, everything she'd worked for, threatened again, by a man who had tried to destroy her once and was coming back to finish the job. "What do we do?" "We fight, but we fight smart. Christine Park called this morning. She wants to do a follow-up story, counter the narrative before it takes hold. And if it doesn't work..." Tank put his hand on her shoulder. "Then we fight harder. We didn't come this far to lose now." At 3:00 p.m. that afternoon, Christine Park set up her camera in the half-finished expansion space. "Miss Williams, let's talk about the accusations being made against you." "They're lies, all of them. Howard Fletcher claims you conspired with the bikers to intimidate Gary Morrison, that you used the fire as cover to steal his business. The fire was an accident, an electrical fire caused by equipment Gary had been told to replace for years. I didn't steal anything. Gary sold his business because he couldn't afford to repair it. I bought this space with money I raised from the community." "What about the claim that the Iron Brotherhood threatened Gary?" "They didn't threaten anyone. They stood up for me when nobody else would. They defended my dignity when I was being humiliated. That's not intimidation. That's justice." Christine leaned forward. "Fletcher's lawyer is claiming you manipulated the situation, that you used the viral video to generate sympathy and then exploited that sympathy to build your business." Denise's eyes flashed. "I spent 16 years working at Rosie's Diner. 16 years of minimum wage and bad tips and customers who treated me like I was invisible. When Preston Harrington spit on me, I didn't plan anything. I didn't scheme. I just stood there and tried not to cry." Her voice cracked. "The bikers stood up because they saw what was happening and decided it wasn't okay. The money they gave me, I used it for my son's medicine, for my car, for shoes without holes in them. I didn't plan any of this. I just survived. And when I saw a chance to build something better, I took it." "What do you say to people who believe Fletcher's version of events?" Denise looked directly into the camera. "I say look at the evidence. Look at the bank records showing Fletcher took hundreds of thousands of dollars from Senator Harrington. Look at the permits he denied to other businesses that didn't pay bribes. Look at the pattern of corruption that destroyed people's dreams for years." She paused. "I'm not a schemer. I'm not a manipulator. I'm a 45-year-old single mother who saw an opportunity and worked harder than I've ever worked in my life to make something real. If that makes me a villain, then I guess I'm a villain." The interview aired that night. By morning, Fletcher's lawsuit had collapsed. His own lawyer withdrew from the case after Christine's story prompted 3 more witnesses to come forward with evidence of corruption. By the end of the week, Fletcher's bail was revoked and he was back in custody facing additional charges. Denise watched the news in her office, a small room in the back of the expansion that she'd claimed as her own. "We won," Preston said, standing in the doorway. "This battle, not the war." "What war?" Denise turned off the television. "The war that never ends. The war between people who have power and people who want it. Between people who build things and people who tear them down. Between people who stand up and people who look away." "That sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's worth it." At 6:00 a.m. 2 months later, Table 9's expansion opened. The new space doubled their capacity. The new kitchen allowed for a more diverse menu. The new staff, 12 new employees, all from the local community, filled the restaurant with energy and purpose. Malik, now 13, worked as a busboy on weekends, earning his own money, building his own pride. "You're doing good, baby," Denise told him as he cleared a table with practiced efficiency. "Thanks, Mama. Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Are we rich now?" Denise laughed. "No, baby, we're not rich. But the restaurant's doing good, right? We have more customers than ever." "We're doing okay, but okay isn't rich. Okay is being able to pay the bills and save a little for the future. Okay is security. Rich is something else entirely." "What's rich?" Denise thought about it. Rich is never worrying about money, never thinking about whether you can afford medicine or food or a roof over your head. Rich is having so much that losing some wouldn't change anything. "Do you want to be rich?" "I want to be secure. I want to know that if something goes wrong, we'll be okay. I want to be able to send you to college without going into debt. I want to leave you something when I'm gone." Malik was quiet for a moment. "Preston's rich. Or he was. He was. Now he's something else." "What's he now?" Denise looked across the restaurant. Preston was taking an order from a young couple, laughing at something they'd said, moving with an ease that would have been unimaginable a year ago. He's becoming. That's what he is. He's becoming whoever he's going to be. At 8:30 p.m. on a Friday night, the restaurant was at full capacity, every table filled, a waiting list 20 names long, staff moving at full speed, kitchen firing on all cylinders. Denise stood near the hostess stand watching it all happen. Tank appeared beside her. "Look at what you built." "What we built?" "No, this is yours. We just helped. Without you, none of this would exist. Without that moment when you stood up, anyone would have done what we did." Denise shook her head. "No, they wouldn't have. That's the whole point. Everyone in that diner saw what was happening to me. 30 people watched a teenager spit in my face, and none of them moved. None of them said a word. Until you did." She turned to face him. "That's not nothing, Tank. That's everything." Tank was quiet for a long moment. "My mama would have liked you. She would have been proud to know you." "Tell me about her." "She was small, barely 5 feet tall, but she was the strongest person I ever knew. Raised 4 kids on a maid's salary, kept us fed and clothed and in school when everything in the world was trying to tear us apart." His voice dropped. "She died when I was 22. Heart attack. I was in the Marines stationed overseas. Didn't even get to say goodbye." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She lived a good life. A hard life, but a good one. And everything I do, everything the Brotherhood does is because of her, because she taught me that you don't look away when someone needs help. You don't pretend you didn't see. You stand up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." At 11:30 p.m., the last customer left. The staff cleaned up, counted tips, said their goodnights. Preston was the last to leave. "You heading out?" Denise asked. "In a minute. Wanted to talk to you about something." "What?" Preston pulled an envelope from his pocket, handed it to her. "What's this?" "Application to the hospitality program at Jackson State. I want to go to school, learn how to do this properly." Denise opened the envelope, read the application, saw the essay Preston had written about his journey, about the spit, about the 3 days, about everything that had happened since. "This is good, really good." "You think I have a shot?" "I think you have more than a shot. I think you're going to get in, and I think you're going to be great at it." Preston's face showed something she'd never seen before: vulnerability, hope, fear of hoping. "I don't know what I'm doing, Miss Denise. I've never known what I'm doing. My whole life, everything was planned out for me. Yale, law school, politics, following in my father's footsteps. Now that's all gone, and I'm just trying to figure it out." "That's what everyone does, Preston. Figure it out as they go. The difference between you and most people is that you're actually trying. Most people just give up." "I almost gave up, 100 times. But you didn't." Because of you, because of Tank, because every time I wanted to quit, I remembered what you looked like standing there with spit on your face, still showing up the next day, still working, still surviving. If you could do that, I figured I could at least try. Denise reached out, touched his shoulder. You're not the same person who walked into that diner a year ago. You know that, right? I know. I just don't know who I am instead. You're finding out. That's the whole point. You're finding out. At 1:00 a.m., Denise finally went home. Malik was asleep. The apartment was quiet. She made herself tea and sat in the kitchen looking at the wall where she'd pinned pictures of the restaurant's progress. From burned-out shell to thriving business. From victim to owner. From surviving to building. Her phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Laura's in the hospital. Heart issues. Can you come? Denise grabbed her keys and ran. At 2:15 a.m., she arrived at the hospital. Victoria was in the waiting room, eyes red, hands shaking. What happened? She collapsed at home. They think it's her heart. She's in surgery now. Preston arrived 10 minutes later, then Tank, then Maria and Marcus, and half the staff of Table 9. They waited together. Strangers who had become family, enemies who had become allies, a community that had formed around a woman who refused to give up. At 4:47 a.m., the surgeon emerged. She's stable. The surgery went well, but she's going to need time to recover. Weeks, maybe months. Relief flooded through the waiting room. Denise sat down, felt the exhaustion of the past year crash over her like a wave. Victoria sat beside her. She's going to be okay. I know, but what? Denise shook her head. Nothing. Just tired. You're more than tired. What is it? Denise was quiet for a long moment. For a second, when I heard she was in the hospital, I thought it was happening again. Everything falling apart. Everything I'd built crumbling, like the fire, like the permits, like every time I've dared to hope for something good. Victoria took her hand. It's not falling apart. Laura's going to recover. The restaurant's thriving. You've built something real. I know. But the fear never goes away. The fear that it's all temporary, that something's going to come along and take it all away. That fear doesn't go away because it's real. Bad things do happen. Things do fall apart. But you know what else is real. You, your strength, your ability to rebuild. That's what I learned from watching you. Not that everything works out, but that you keep going even when it doesn't. At 6:00 a.m., Laura woke up. Denise was the first one they let in. The old woman looked small in the hospital bed, fragile, but her eyes were still sharp. Heard I caused a commotion. You scared us. Sorry about that. Body's not what it used to be. You need to rest. Take time off from the restaurant. Laura grabbed her hand. Absolutely not. The doctors say I need to stay active, need purpose, need something to get up for in the morning. Laura, don't argue with me. I'm 83 years old and I just survived heart surgery. I've earned the right to be stubborn. Despite everything, Denise laughed. Fine, but light duty only, hosting, greeting, no heavy lifting. Deal. Laura's grip tightened. Thank you. For what? For letting me be part of something, for giving me a purpose when I thought I'd used up all my purposes, for showing me that it's never too late to be the person you should have been all along. Denise squeezed her hand. You showed me the same thing. At 11:00 a.m., Denise returned to the restaurant. The breakfast rush was in full swing, staff moving like a well-oiled machine, customers filling every seat. She stood in the doorway watching it all happen. Tank appeared beside her. Laura's going to be okay. She's going to be fine, stubborn as ever. Good. We need stubborn people. Denise smiled. We've got plenty of those. Speaking of stubborn, I've got news. Good news or bad news? Both. The governor called this morning. She wants to meet with you. Denise's eyebrows shot up. The governor? Governor Linda Hayes. She's proposing new legislation, worker protection, dignity requirements, fair wage mandates. She wants your input. My input? You're not just a restaurant owner anymore, Denise. You're a symbol, a story that people know, a voice that people listen to. I'm just a waitress who caught a break. You're a waitress who stood up when standing up wasn't safe. That means something. That matters. Denise looked around her restaurant, the tables filled with people eating food she'd learned to cook over 16 years, the staff she'd trained herself, the community she'd helped build. When does she want to meet? Next week, Tuesday. Tuesday's my busiest day. I know, that's why I said both good news and bad. Denise laughed. Fine, tell her I'll be there, but she's buying me lunch. At 3:30 p.m. the following Tuesday, Denise walked into the governor's office. She was wearing her best dress, the one she'd bought for opening day, the one that made her feel like more than a waitress, more than a survivor, like someone who belonged in rooms like this. Governor Linda Hayes rose to greet her. Miss Williams, thank you for coming. Governor, thank you for the invitation. They sat. An aide brought coffee. The formalities concluded, the governor got straight to the point. I've been following your story for months. The video, the fire, the corruption investigation, the restaurant, all of it. I'm flattered. You should be. You've become something rare in politics. A genuine story, not manufactured, not spin-doctored, real. I'm not political. That's exactly what makes you powerful. You're not trying to be anything. You're just being. And that's refreshing in a world full of people performing versions of themselves. The governor leaned forward. I want to propose legislation in your name, the Williams Act, worker protection standards, dignity requirements, mandatory training for employers on harassment and discrimination, real consequences for violations. Denise felt her heart skip. In my name. You've become a symbol of what happens when workers are treated with contempt, and what happens when communities stand up. Your story has already changed how people think about these issues. Let's change the laws, too. I don't know anything about politics. You don't need to. I've got lawyers and policy experts for that. What I need from you is your voice, your story, your willingness to stand up and say that this matters. Denise was quiet for a long moment. My son Malik asked me once if we were rich. I told him no. I told him we were okay. Secure. That's all I've ever wanted. Security. Knowing that if something goes wrong, we'll survive. And now I'm realizing that security isn't enough. Not for everyone. There are thousands of people like me out there. Millions. Working jobs that pay nothing. Taking abuse because they can't afford to quit, swallowing their dignity because dignity doesn't pay the rent. She met the governor's eyes. If my story can help change that, I'm in. Governor Hayes smiled. Then let's get to work. At 7:00 p.m. that evening, Denise stood in front of a crowd of reporters, the governor beside her, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward her face. The Williams Act represents a fundamental shift in how we think about work, Governor Hayes announced. It establishes baseline dignity standards for all workers, mandatory training, real consequences, and a message to every employer in Mississippi: your workers are human beings and you will treat them as such. A reporter called out a question. Miss Williams, how does it feel to have legislation named after you? Denise stepped to the microphone. It feels surreal. A year ago, I was a waitress making minimum wage, praying my son's asthma medication wouldn't run out before payday. Now I'm standing here talking about laws that might help people like me never have to feel what I felt. What did you feel? Denise paused. Invisible. Worthless. Like no matter how hard I worked, I would never be seen as a real person. Just a pair of hands that poured coffee and carried plates. She looked directly into the cameras. Nobody should feel that way. Nobody should have to choose between their dignity and their survival. And if this legislation helps even one person avoid what I went through, then everything that happened to me was worth it. The press conference ended. The coverage was overwhelming. By the next morning, the Williams Act was trending nationwide. By the end of the week, 3 other states had announced similar legislation. And Denise Williams, former waitress owner of Table 9, stood at the center of a movement she'd never planned to start. At 6:00 a.m. the following Tuesday, she arrived at her restaurant. Same time as always, Same routine as always. Coffee first, prep work second, staff briefing third. But something was different. Preston was waiting for her. You saw the news? I saw it. You're famous now. Really famous. Not just viral video famous. Actually famous. I don't want to be famous. I want to run my restaurant. You can do both. Can I? Every time I turn around, there's another interview request, another appearance, another demand on my time. I didn't sign up for this. Preston was quiet for a moment. No, you didn't. But maybe this is what you're supposed to do. What do you mean? You've spent your whole life taking care of other people, your son, your customers, everyone but yourself. Maybe this is your chance to take care of everyone, to use what happened to you to help people who are going through the same thing. Denise set down her coffee. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She looked at him, this boy who had spit on her, who had become a man in the years since, who had shown up every Tuesday, worked every shift, learned every lesson. Your grandmother always said you had potential. She was right. Preston smiled. Speaking of my grandmother, she's being released from the hospital today. She wants to come straight here. To work. To work. Denise shook her head, but she was smiling. Fine, but light duty. She knows. And if she overexerts herself, I'm personally carrying her back to the hospital. I'll tell her you said that. At 10:00 a.m., Laura Harrington walked through the doors of Table 9. She was thinner than before, slower, but her eyes were still sharp. Miss Williams, I believe I'm scheduled for a shift. Laura, you just got out of the hospital. Which is exactly why I need to be here. Hospital beds are for dying. This place is for living. She tied on an apron, took her position at the hostess stand, and Table 9 continued to grow. At 2:00 p.m., Denise got a phone call that changed everything. Miss Williams, this is Senator Michael Torres from Washington. I've been following your story with great interest. Senator Torres, I've seen you on the news. And I've seen you. The Williams Act is impressive, but it's only state legislation. I want to take it national. Denise's heart stopped. National. Federal legislation, worker protection standards across all 50 states. A dignity mandate for every employer in America. And I want you to help me push it through. Senator, I'm a restaurant owner. I don't know anything about federal politics. You know what it's like to be treated without dignity. You know what it costs. You know why it matters. That's worth more than any policy degree. Denise was silent for a long moment. What would I have to do? Testify before Congress. Tell your story. Put a face on legislation that could change millions of lives. Congress. I know it's a lot to ask, but you've already done the hard part. You've already survived. All I'm asking is that you help others survive too. Denise looked around her restaurant, the tables filled with customers, the staff working in harmony, the life she'd built from nothing. Let me think about it. Take all the time you need. But Miss Williams, yes. The world needs people like you, people who stand up, people who refuse to look away. Don't let fear keep you from doing what you're meant to do. The call ended. Denise set down her phone. Tank was watching her from across the room. What was that about? Washington wants me to testify before Congress. Tank nodded slowly. What are you going to do? Denise looked at the restaurant, at the community she'd built, at the life she'd created from the ashes of humiliation. I'm going to stand up. One more time. The flight to Washington took 2 hours and 17 minutes. Denise spent every second of it staring out the window, watching Mississippi disappear beneath the clouds, wondering what she was doing 30,000 feet in the air when she should be running her restaurant. Tank sat beside her. He'd refused to let her go alone. You're thinking too hard, he said. How can you tell? Your jaw's been clenched for the past hour. You're going to crack a tooth. Denise forced herself to relax. I don't belong in Washington. Nobody belongs in Washington. That's the problem with the place. I'm serious, Tank. I'm a waitress from Jackson, Mississippi. I make pancakes and pour coffee. I don't testify before Congress. You didn't used to own a restaurant either. Things change. This is different. How? Denise turned from the window. looked at this man who had changed her life with a single decision to stand up. Because if I mess this up, it's not just me who suffers. It's everyone who's counting on this legislation. Every waitress who's been spit on. Every worker who's been humiliated. Every person who needs this law to pass. Tank was quiet for a moment. You remember what I told you about my mama? I remember. She used to say something. Every time she came home from a bad day. Every time someone treated her like she was nothing. She'd look at me and say, Marcus, the only way they win is if we stop showing up. He leaned forward. You've been showing up your whole life, Denise, through poverty and humiliation and fires and corruption. You showed up when it would have been easier to quit. That's why you're on this plane. Not because you're special, because you refuse to stop. At 2:30 p.m., they landed at Reagan National. Senator Torres had sent a car, black SUV, government plates, a driver who didn't make small talk. They drove through streets Denise had only seen on television. The Capitol dome rising in the distance, the monuments to presidents and movements and history that suddenly felt very close. This is really happening, she said. It's really happening. I think I'm going to throw up. Please don't. This is a nice car. Despite everything, she laughed. At 4:00 p.m., they arrived at Senator Torres's office. He was younger than she'd expected. Early 50s, sharp suit, kind eyes. The handshake of someone who actually meant it when he said, "Nice to meet you." Miss Williams, thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation. I think, Torres smiled, nervous, terrified. Good. The nervous ones are always the most authentic. It's the people who aren't scared who worry me. He led them to a conference room. Maps and charts and policy documents spread across the table. Staff members moving with purpose. The hearing is tomorrow at 10:00 a.m. You'll have 15 minutes to deliver your statement. After that, the committee will ask questions. Some friendly, some not. There are senators who don't want this legislation to pass. They've got donors who profit from keeping workers powerless. They're going to try to discredit you. Denise's stomach tightened. How? They'll question your motives, suggest you're just trying to get famous, imply that the viral video was staged for publicity. That's insane. That's politics. The truth doesn't matter as much as the narrative. Our job is to make sure your narrative is stronger than theirs. Tank stepped forward. What do you need from us? Just the truth. Miss Williams's story, in her own words, raw and real and impossible to dismiss. He handed Denise a folder. These are some talking points, key statistics, relevant legislation. But honestly, I don't think you need any of it. Just tell them what happened. Tell them what it felt like. Tell them why it matters. Denise took the folder, didn't open it. I've never spoken in front of more than 30 people in my life. Tomorrow I'm supposed to speak in front of the whole country. The cameras will be there, but don't think about the cameras. Think about the person watching who's going through what you went through. Speak to them. The rest will take care of itself. At 7:00 p.m., Denise sat alone in her hotel room. The folder was still unopened. The speech was still unwritten. The terror was still growing. Her phone buzzed. Video call from Malik. Hey, Mama? Hey, baby. His face filled the screen. 13 years old now, healthy, strong, working at the restaurant on weekends, becoming someone she was proud of. You scared? How'd you know? Because you always get quiet when you're scared. You're doing that thing where you don't blink enough. She laughed. You know me too well. I know you're going to be amazing. How do you know that? Because you're always amazing, even when you don't believe it. Denise felt tears prick her eyes. When did you get so smart? I learned from you. Baby, I don't know if I can do this. All those people, all those cameras, the whole country watching. Mama, Malik's voice was steady, certain. You stood in a diner with spit on your face and didn't break. You survived a fire. You built a restaurant from nothing. You changed laws. You changed lives. He paused. If you can do all that you can do this, I believe in you. Everyone believes in you. What if I freeze up? What if I forget what to say? Then just tell them the truth. That's all you've ever done. That's all anyone's ever asked.
After the call ended, Denise sat in the silence. Then she opened the folder, started writing. At 6:00 a.m., she woke up to a knock on her door. Tank stood in the hallway with coffee and a bag from a local bakery. "Thought you might need breakfast." "I'm too nervous to eat." "Eat anyway. Can't change the world on an empty stomach." They sat together, ate croissants, drank coffee, didn't talk much. At 8:30 a.m., the car arrived. The drive to the capital was short, but felt eternal. Denise watched the city pass by, watched the tourists with their cameras, watched the staffers rushing to meetings, watched the world that had suddenly become her world. At 9:15 a.m., they entered the hearing room. It was smaller than she'd expected. But the cameras made it feel enormous. Dozens of them, pointed at the witness table where she would sit, ready to broadcast her face to millions. "Miss Williams?" Senator Torres appeared beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Like I might pass out." "You won't. Take your seat. Breathe. When they call your name, just tell your story." She sat at the witness table. Tank took a seat in the gallery behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence. At 10:00 a.m., exactly the committee chairman called the hearing to order. "We're here today to discuss the proposed Dignity in Work Act. Our first witness is Miss Denise Williams, owner of Table 9 Restaurant in Jackson, Mississippi. Miss Williams, you may begin." Denise looked at her prepared statement, the words she'd written at 2:00 a.m., the carefully crafted sentences designed to sound professional and polished. Then she set the paper aside. "My name is Denise Williams. I'm 46 years old. I'm a single mother. And for 16 years, I was a waitress at a diner in Jackson, Mississippi." Her voice echoed in the chamber. "On a Tuesday morning, about 18 months ago, a teenager spit in my face." The room went silent. His name was Preston Harrington. His father was a state senator. He was wearing a watch that cost more than I made in a year. And he spit on me because he thought he could, because he thought I was nothing, because he thought people like me don't matter. She paused. Let the words settle. I stood there with saliva dripping down my cheek, and nobody moved. 30 people in that diner watched a woman get spit on, and nobody said a word. Because that's what happens when workers are invisible. When dignity is optional. When showing up for work means accepting that you might be humiliated at any moment. But then something happened. 10 men in leather vests stood up. They were bikers, members of a motorcycle club, and they saw what nobody else wanted to see. They saw a human being being treated like garbage, and they refused to look away. Denise felt the tears coming, didn't try to stop them. Those men changed my life. Not because they gave me money, though they did. Not because they made the boy apologize, though they did that too. But because they showed me that dignity matters, that standing up matters, that refusing to look away when someone is being hurt is the most important thing any of us can do. She looked directly at the senators. I'm here because of what happened after, the fire that destroyed my workplace, the corruption that tried to stop me from rebuilding, the community that came together to help me create something new. But mostly, I'm here because there are millions of people like me, waitresses and janitors and cashiers and caregivers, people who work 60 hours a week and still can't afford medicine for their children, people who smile through abuse because they can't afford to quit. People who have been told their whole lives that dignity is a luxury they haven't earned. Her voice strengthened. The Dignity in Work Act matters because it says those people matter. It says that every worker in America deserves to be treated with basic human respect. It says that no one should have to choose between their paycheck and their dignity. She leaned forward. I was spit on because a boy thought I was invisible. This legislation says that no worker is invisible, that everyone counts, that dignity isn't something you earn with a paycheck, it's something you're born with. I've been asked why I flew across the country to testify, why I left my restaurant and my son and my community to come here and tell this story one more time. She looked at the cameras. I came because somewhere in America right now, someone is being humiliated at their job. Someone is swallowing their pride to survive. Someone is wondering if they matter at all. I came to tell that person you matter. You've always mattered. And if I can stand up in front of Congress after everything I've been through, you can stand up too. Pass this legislation, not for me, for them. For everyone who's never had anyone stand up for them. For everyone who's been told they're nothing and started to believe it. Thank you. The chamber was silent. Then from the gallery, someone started clapping. Tank, standing, applauding. Others joined, staff members, spectators, even some of the senators themselves. The chairman gavelled for order, but his eyes were wet. Thank you, Miss Williams. The committee will now proceed with questions. Senator Martinez from Texas leaned forward. Miss Williams, I was moved by your testimony, but I have to ask about the practical implications. Won't these regulations burden small businesses? Won't they cost jobs? Denise nodded. Senator, with respect, I am a small business owner. I run a restaurant with 23 employees. I pay fair wages. I provide basic benefits. I treat my workers with dignity. And you know what? My business is thriving. She pulled out a paper. Last quarter, Table 9 was the most profitable restaurant in Jackson. Not despite treating workers well, but because of it. My staff shows up because they want to, not because they're afraid. They give their best because they know I see them as human beings. The idea that dignity costs jobs is a lie told by people who profit from treating workers like machines. The truth is, dignity creates loyalty, respect creates quality, and investing in people pays off. Senator Blackwell from Kentucky was less friendly. Miss Williams, I've seen the viral video. I've seen the coverage. Some might say you've built quite a brand around being a victim. How do we know this isn't just a publicity stunt? Denise felt her jaw tighten. Senator, a year and a half ago, I was making $7.25 an hour. I couldn't afford medicine for my son's asthma. I walked 3 miles to work because I couldn't afford to fix my car. I had newspapers stuffed in my shoes because I couldn't afford new ones. She met his eyes. Nobody chooses to be spit on for publicity. Nobody builds a brand around being humiliated in front of 30 people. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't scheme. I survived, and when people tried to tear me down, I got back up. If that's a publicity stunt, Senator, then I guess survival is a publicity stunt. The room was silent. Senator Blackwell shifted uncomfortably. I have no further questions. At 11:47 a.m., the hearing concluded. Denise walked out of the chamber on shaking legs. Tank was waiting. You did good. I don't know. That senator from Kentucky was an idiot. Everyone saw it. You made him look small without even trying. Senator Torres appeared. Miss Williams, that was extraordinary. The coverage is already overwhelmingly positive. We've got momentum. What happens now? Now the committee votes, then the full Senate, then the House. It's a long road, but you've given us the best possible start. He shook her hand. Whatever happens next, you should be proud of what you did today. At 3:00 p.m., Denise's phone started exploding. Interview requests from every major network, messages from workers across the country sharing their own stories, emails from organizations wanting her to speak at events, and one message that stopped her cold. From Preston. Watched your testimony. Cried the whole time. You're a better person than I'll ever be. Thank you for not giving up on me. She read it 3 times. Then she called him. Preston? Miss Denise, I'm sorry I shouldn't have... Don't apologize. Thank you for the message. I meant every word. I know you did. Silence on the line. How's school going? Good. I'm top of my class. Professor says I've got a real future in hospitality management. I'm not surprised. Miss Denise, I've been thinking about what comes next after I graduate. What are you thinking? I want to open my own place, not in Jackson, somewhere else, somewhere I can start fresh. But I want to do it the way you do it. Fair wages, dignity, making people feel seen. Denise felt something warm spread through her chest. That sounds like a good plan. Will you help me when the time comes? I know I don't deserve it after everything, but... Preston. She cut him off gently. You've earned it. You've worked for it. You've changed. That's all anyone can ask. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep showing up. That's all I've ever asked.
At 6:00 p.m., Denise boarded her flight back to Mississippi. Tank sat beside her again, same seat, same quiet presence. "You think it'll pass?" she asked. "The legislation?" "Yeah. I think you gave it the best chance it's ever had. Beyond that, it's out of our hands." "That's what scares me. I've spent my whole life learning that if I work hard enough, I can make things happen. But this is different. This depends on other people, on politicians, on forces I can't control." Tank was quiet for a moment. "You know what my mama would say." "What she'd say, do your part and let go of the rest. You've done your part, Denise, more than anyone could ask. Whatever happens next, you did everything you could." The plane took off. Mississippi appeared below them. Home, the place where everything had happened, the place where everything had changed. At 10:00 p.m., she walked through the doors of Table 9. The restaurant was closed, dark, but someone had left the lights on in the kitchen. She walked back there, found Laura Harrington washing dishes. "Laura, it's 10 o'clock at night. What are you doing here?" "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd be useful." "The doctors said you need rest." "The doctors say a lot of things." Laura dried her hands. "How did it go?" "I don't know. I talked. They listened. Now we wait." The waiting is always the hardest part. They stood together in the quiet kitchen, two women from completely different worlds, both survivors of systems that tried to break them. "Can I tell you something?" Laura said. "Of course. When I gave you that check, the $500,000, I thought I was helping you. Thought I was making up for what my family had done. But now," she paused, "now I realize you helped me. You gave me a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, something to be part of that actually matters." "Laura, let me finish. I'm 83 years old. I've got maybe a few years left if I'm lucky. And I've spent most of my life being useless, being ornamental, being Mrs. Somebody instead of Laura." Her voice cracked. "This restaurant, this community, you've shown me that it's never too late. That even at the end of a long, wasted life, there's still time to do something real." Denise took her hand. "Your life wasn't wasted, Laura. You raised Victoria. You influenced Preston. You showed them that change is possible. I didn't do enough. Not for years. Not when it mattered. You're doing enough now. That's what matters." They stood there in the kitchen. Two women, holding hands, united by something stronger than blood. At 8:00 a.m., 3 weeks later, the Senate voted on the Dignity in Work Act. Denise watched from the restaurant, surrounded by staff and customers and friends who had become family. Tank was there. Laura, Victoria, Maria, Marcus, Malik, and Preston, who had driven all night from school to be there. The vote was close, senator after senator casting their ballot, the numbers climbing, the tension building. When the final vote was counted, the room exploded. 53 to 47. The bill had passed. Denise didn't realize she was crying until Malik hugged her. "You did it, Mama. We did it. All of us." The celebration lasted for hours, customers buying rounds for strangers, staff dancing between tables, a community celebrating a victory that belonged to everyone. At 11:00 p.m., the restaurant finally emptied. Denise stood at the hostess stand, looking at the space she'd built from nothing. The tables filled with memories, the walls covered with photos of everyone who had helped along the way. Tank appeared beside her. "Hell of a day. Hell of a journey. You know this isn't over, right? The House still has to vote. The President still has to sign. There's a long road ahead." "I know. You ready for it?" Denise looked at Table 9, the big booth in the corner, reserved forever for the people who had stood up when no one else would. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until now." At 6:00 a.m. the following Tuesday, Denise arrived at the restaurant. Same time as always, same routine as always. Preston was already there, apron on, ready to work. "Morning, Miss Denise." "Morning, Preston." They worked together in comfortable silence, setting up for another day, another rush, another chance to build something that mattered. At 6:45 a.m., the Iron Brotherhood arrived. Tank, Bone, Preacher, Mama Bear, all of them, taking their places at table 9 like they had every Tuesday for years. "Morning, Miss Denise," Tank called. "Morning, table 9." She brought coffee without asking, set it down on a table that had become sacred ground. "You see the news this morning?" Tank asked. "Haven't had time. House voted last night, passed the Dignity in Work Act, 251 to 184. Denise's hand froze on the coffee pot. "It passed. It passed. President's signing it tomorrow. They want you there." "At the White House." "At the White House." She set down the pot, sat in the booth beside Tank, tried to process what she was hearing. "I started as a waitress, making minimum wage, walking to work because I couldn't afford to fix my car." "I know. And now I'm going to the White House to watch the president sign a law with my testimony attached to it." "I know. How did this happen?" Tank smiled, the same smile he'd given her on that Tuesday morning when everything changed. "You stood up. That's how it happened. You stood up and refused to be invisible, and the world finally saw you." At 3:00 p.m. the following day, Denise Williams stood in the East Room of the White House. She was wearing the same dress she'd worn to the congressional hearing, the same dress she'd worn on opening day, the dress that made her feel like more than a waitress. The president stood at the podium, cameras flashing, history being made. The Dignity in Work Act represents a fundamental shift in how we value labor in this country. It says that every worker matters, that every job is worthy of respect, that dignity is not a privilege of the wealthy, it is a right of the human. He turned to Denise. "This legislation exists because of people like Miss Denise Williams, a woman who was humiliated at her job, who was spit on by someone who thought she was nothing, who refused to accept that treatment as normal." "Miss Williams, would you say a few words?" Denise stepped forward. The cameras swung toward her, the whole world watching. 2 years ago, I was invisible. I was a waitress making minimum wage, praying my son's medication wouldn't run out before payday. I had no power, no voice, no hope that anything would ever change." She paused. "Then 10 people stood up for me. They saw what everyone else ignored. They defended my dignity when I couldn't defend it myself. And that moment, that single moment of people refusing to look away, changed everything." She looked at the camera, knowing that somewhere a woman just like her was watching. "If you're out there right now working a job where you're treated like nothing, I see you. You matter. And this law is proof that when we stand together, we can change the world." The president signed the bill. Cameras flashed. History was made. At 6:00 a.m. the following Tuesday, Denise arrived at table 9, same time as always. But everything was different now. The restaurant was featured in national magazines. Celebrities wanted to visit. Business schools wanted to study her model. Franchisees wanted to expand her vision across the country. She said no to most of it. Not because she wasn't ambitious, but because some things matter more than growth. "You could be worth millions," Preston said one morning. "If you franchised, if you expanded." "I could, but then it wouldn't be this anymore." "What is this?" Denise looked around the restaurant, at the staff who had become family, at the customers who had become community, at the booth in the corner where everything had started. This is home. This is real. This is what happens when people stand up for each other instead of stepping over each other. At 10:00 a.m., Laura Harrington arrived for her shift. 84 years old now, still sharp, still determined, still showing up. "Morning, Miss Denise." "Morning, Laura. How are you feeling?" "Old, but useful." She tied on her apron. "That's all anyone can ask." They worked side by side, the waitress and the billionaire's widow, united by something stronger than money or class or the walls that usually separated people like them. At 2:00 p.m., a young woman walked in, 23 years old, nervous, holding a folder like it was a lifeline. "Miss Williams, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Angela. I'm a waitress at a diner across town. I saw your story on the news. I saw what you built, and I was wondering—" She trailed off, too scared to finish. "Wondering how you did it, how you went from where I am to where you are, because right now I can't even imagine it."
Denise looked at this young woman, saw herself, saw every waitress who had ever been told they were nothing. "Sit down. Let me get you some coffee, and I'll tell you exactly how I did it." They talked for 2 hours. Denise told her everything: the spit, the fire, the corruption, the fear, the moments when she wanted to give up, and the people who wouldn't let her. When Angela left, she was crying, but she was also smiling. "Thank you," she said, "for showing me it's possible. It's possible for everyone. You just have to believe it, and you have to show up." At 8:00 p.m., the restaurant closed for the night. Staff went home, tables were cleaned, lights were dimmed. Denise stood alone in the dining room. Malik was at home doing homework. Victoria had taken Laura home. Preston was driving back to school. Tank and the Brotherhood had finished their Tuesday ritual and roared off into the evening. She was alone, but for the first time in her life, alone didn't feel lonely. She looked at the wall of photos, every person who had helped her, every moment that had mattered, the viral video playing on a phone screen, the fire truck outside the old diner, the construction crew building this space, the opening day crowd, the congressional hearing, the White House signing, a journey she never planned, a life she never imagined. Her phone buzzed, text from Malik. "Mama, I'm proud of you. Love you." She smiled, typed back, "Love you too, baby. See you at home." She locked the door of table 9, walked to her car, drove home through streets that had known her whole life, past the old diner where everything had started, past the corner where she used to wait for buses that never came on time, past the apartment building where she'd raised Malik on nothing but love and determination. At home, her son was waiting with leftover pie from the restaurant. "Thought you might be hungry." "I'm always hungry." They ate together, mother and son, two people who had survived everything the world had thrown at them. "Mama." "Yeah, baby. I've been thinking about what I want to do after high school. And I want to work at the restaurant, full-time, learn the business. Someday maybe take over." Denise set down her fork. "Are you sure you could do anything? College? Career? Whatever you want." "I know. But this is what I want. I want to build what you built. I want to make people feel the way you make them feel. I want to show up." Denise felt tears coming, didn't try to stop them. "Then that's what you'll do." They finished their pie in comfortable silence. Later, after Malik had gone to bed, Denise sat on her small porch, looking at the stars, thinking about the journey. 2 years ago, she had been invisible, a number on a paycheck, a pair of hands that poured coffee, a body that moved through the world without anyone really seeing her. Now she was a symbol, a story, a law with her name attached to it. But underneath all of that, she was still the same person. Still Denise Williams from Jackson, Mississippi. Still a mother who would do anything for her son. Still a woman who showed up every day and gave everything she had. The difference was that now the world saw her, and she would never be invisible again. At 6:00 a.m. the following Tuesday, she walked through the doors of Table 9. Preston was already there, apron on, coffee brewing. "Morning, Miss Denise." "Morning, Preston." The Iron Brotherhood arrived at 6:45, same booth, same order, same easy conversation that felt like home. Customers filled the tables, staff moved with practiced grace, the kitchen fired on all cylinders. And Denise Williams, owner of Table 9, former Waitress mother survivor, stood at the center of it all. Not because she was special, because she refused to stop showing up. At 8:00 p.m., the restaurant closed. Denise turned off the lights, locked the door, looked at the sign that bore her restaurant's name. Table 9. The booth where everything had changed. The booth reserved forever for the people who stand up. She smiled, walked to her car, drove into a future she had built with her own hands. Because that's what happens when ordinary people make extraordinary choices. When they stand up instead of looking away. When they refuse to accept that cruelty is normal. When they believe against all evidence that dignity is possible. The world doesn't change because of politicians or laws or viral videos. It changes because of people like Denise Williams, people who show up, people who stand up, people who matter. And the only question that remains is this:
When the moment comes for you, when someone is being treated like they're nothing, when dignity is being destroyed in front of your eyes, when the world is asking you to look away, what will you do? The answer to that question determines everything, because the world only changes when we change it. One choice at a time, one stand at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Denise Williams chose to stand. 10 bikers chose to stand with her. A community chose to stand together, and the world became a little better because of it. That's not a story. That's a promise. And the promise is this: dignity always wins in the end, because enough people will always stand up to defend it, starting now, starting with you.